All right, hello, welcome to the January 7th Select Board meeting. I have Francine Tishman to my right and Chris Fowles to my left, and this is Matt Rowland. I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. Let's pause and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, we'll get right into it here. Appointments and resignations. We have a resignation of Anthony Zaharias. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly, from the Conservation Commission. Everybody see that? We have a letter from him. He's resigning effective January 1st. And so we'll have a vacancy on Concom.
Another one.
Another one.
Yes.
How many do we have now?
3, actually.
Okay.
We have a quorum of 4, and 3 empties, and then I'm the non-voting select board representative.
Okay. So is there technically a quorum with just?
There are, if all 4 people show up, yeah.
Okay.
I don't count, so
Okay.
there are 4 people still.
So if anybody's interested in volunteering for Concom, we'd love to hear from you.
We've had one interested person, and so we've started talking
Great.
to that person so far.
We're going to have 2 other vacancies, so if anybody else is interested, we'd love to hear from you. Does anybody want to make a motion to accept the resignation?
I move to accept Anthony Zacharias' resignation from Concom.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion?
No.
All right, well, let's vote. To accept the resignation of Anthony Zaharias from Concom.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, hearings. So Ed, help me out with the logistics of this, but do I just simply announce that we're opening a hearing?
Well, you should read the, announcement.
Okay.
Well, you can open it up and then read the announcement. And then this is the original one, which was supposed to be December 17th. So that date will be changed because that meeting was postponed until today, of just January 7th.
All right, that's fine. So we have one hearing. It's a poll hearing from NStar Electric Company, Eversource Energy, to install one fully owned pole on Strong Road, approximately 30 feet northerly of existing pole 39/64, to provide electrical service to the house at 97 Strong Road. The hearing is officially open. Does anybody want to speak to this?
Someone here from Eversource would like to do a presentation
Yeah, why don't
on
we
it?
do
Would you like to come up?
Bear with me, I'm pretty sick, but just as did you guys get the maps? I'm curious to see them. Yeah, okay.
Did you say your name and?
Sorry, I'm Jesse Martin,
Okay.
representing
Great.
Eversource. So just simply as you stated, the pole is just to serve the customer at 97 Strong Road. The customer wished to go with underground service, so we install a pole and to supply them service.
Great, and I see the drawings of this. Does anybody else want to speak or say anything to this?
So does the existing pole get removed and this one gets put in? Or?
Actually, a new pole.
It's a new pole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's located on their property. It's not obstructing anything. It's really straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to vote on this, or do we just?
Did we ask if there was anyone here from the public that had any questions or wanted to comment on it?
Anyone from the public that has any questions on this?
Can ask for a vote to close the
Okay.
All right. So
motion in a second.
Yep. Does anyone make a motion to close the hearing?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Now I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on this.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Appreciate it. Feel better.
And now that you've closed the public hearing, you should vote to approve or not approve.
Okay. I move to approve the new pole installation at 97 Strong Road.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right, quarterly reports.
And while Lucy's here, I'll have you sign these two documents, and she can seal them officially.
Okay.
Just two signatures?
Yep. One's for Eversource's records, and one I will give to Lucy for our town records.
Lucy, who ended up winning the game last night? I left before the fourth quarter. Yeah, that's rivalry game. Good, right?
Okay.
I tried waving at you, but you were, I tried waving at you, but you were focused.
Can I use your pen? Mine just ran out of ink.
Yes, and it's not, there you go.
There you go. Thank you.
If you want to keep going with it, you want to keep going with it?
You'll just leave
Okay. Yeah, you can keep going with it.
the MGM.
Okay, quarterly reports. We have reports from Public Safety. Randall Kemp from Highway Department, Ian Illingsworth from Police, and John Workman from Fire. Who wants to go first? You're first on the list, Randall, so you're our guest.
Good evening. Randall Kemp, Highway Superintendent. So we've utilized about 250 tons each of salt and sand to address the 9 winter storms we've had this year, 3 of which were greater than 24-hour duration events. Something I started tracking this year, we have a bin of salt and sand for the residents, and we've gone through 30 tons of sand mix that is taken by residents and distributed through the Triad program for seniors. It's more than I would have guessed.
Are people limited, right, to 1 or 2 buckets, are we not? Theoretically.
We asked that people
Tried
take
to.
2 buckets, but
Yeah.
there's no real policing of that.
Sounds like a lot of,
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have a camera out there, but we don't currently.
sounds like a lot of tonnage, that's all.
It is, it's a lot. Yeah.
We're not even half, we're really not even halfway.
Not
are
even.
we?
No, but we've had a lot of ice.
Yeah, that is true.
We've gone through, I think we've gone through a lot too, treating the roads. We've assisted the water department with water leaks or service installations for 7 days this quarter. Back in October, we hosted a 3-day debris management chainsaw safety training series, which was sponsored by the Western Regional Homeland Security Advisory Council. DPW personnel from Pittsfield, Holyoke, New Marlborough, Agawam, and South Hadley Fire Department joined us, highway crew, to learn about reactive forces, felling, cutting, notch, and hinge techniques and calculations. This was followed by an after the storm advanced skills training event. And it was pretty timely because literally the week we had the course, we had a windstorm that brought down a lot of trees, so it was good. Got to utilize some of those skills we learned. As you hopefully know, we have an employee out for an estimated 4 months due to injury, and I am still working on filling our other 2 open positions. Stormwater compliance tasks are on target. Illicit discharge detection and elimination plan was submitted to the DEP prior to the December 31st deadline. And we are currently working on stormwater pollution prevention plan and good housekeeping for municipal facilities. That's the next task we have to complete.
That's for MS4? The
Yes.
MS4, okay.
Yep. Petroleum compliance tasks are up to date. No problems have been identified in the monthly inspections. Stuff that's sort of outside the quarterly report, but I think it's worth mentioning. Glendale reconstruction is nearly finished. There are some minor issues to address in the spring, as well as the top coat of asphalt to be laid down on the roadway and sidewalk. Pavement preservation that we performed this year, we did crack sealing on Buchanan Circle, Coolidge Drive, Garfield Avenue, Grant Avenue, Madison Avenue, Brickyard Road from Route 10 to Gilbert Road, Clark Street from Route 10 to East Street, Gun Road from Pleasant Street to Line Street, Gun Road extension from Route 10 to Pomeroy Meadow Road, and a small portion of Strong Road between White Loaf Road and Anita Drive. We have been and will continue to address potholes as weather allows. We plan to finish out FY20 work this spring with a paved level overlay of Pomeroy Meadow and Valley Road, west side of Valley Road. We hope to get to grading roads. As Matt knows, we were not able to get to grading of dirt roads this year due to staff shortages.
It's all good.
And what I'm working on immediately is the budget, which is due next week. Do you have any questions?
Have you gotten your new truck yet? Or
No,
when
no
will you?
updates on the truck.
Okay. No timeline or anything from them that they're building it, I'm assuming.
Nope, and I've called the vendor enough times where he knows that I want to know the day it comes in. So that's the other thing. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the 10-year capital plan that I laid out, but I think it's worth taking a look at so you all have a very good idea of what we've got for capital outlay.
Okay.
A lot of zeros.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
Randall?
Just one question.
Sure.
Will you be staying for the item on the not recycling, the,
Yeah, the DEP contract.
The
First
dual-
contract.
Okay.
The dual stream.
Sure.
so I'll wait until then to
Yeah.
ask questions.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
one other question. Do we know if the cabin chassis for the truck has come in and it's at the body upfitter or?
Cabin chassis have not arrived.
Okay, all right. So step one hasn't occurred?
No.
Okay.
I was hoping it would have, but.
Comes in pieces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Ian, Chief, you're next on the list, so I guess we'll just go in the order that it's presented here.
Good evening. Happy New Year. Ian Illingsworth, Chief of Police. I'll start with the Police Department, and I'll just start with the police budget. The general budget, we're on target. We're actually about 45% expended, which is good. If you were to look at your quarterly reports that you receive, you'll see that certain line items are drawn a little heavy, in particular police overtime. We're about 65% expended on that, we should be at 50 at this point. The reason being is due to full-time personnel coverage of open shifts that we've had, critical incidents, storms, and officers on injury leave, we'd had to put a lot more money towards overtime. And in the special town meeting, I'll be seeking to transfer money through dispatch to our overtime line item just to balance that, which should cover us for the rest of the year, hopefully, pending any other unexpected incidents or injury or anything along those lines. Also, our maintenance contract line item, that's about 70% expended. Reason being is a lot of the contracts I paid upright, so that's why that's that high. As far as the administration, we're currently in the process of trying to fulfill our full-time roster, which would be 10 officers. That includes me. We have Officer Lamb just recently graduated from the academy in November, and we are currently in the process of filling the last vacant position, which a PCF was submitted last week relative to that. The part-time personnel, this is often a difficult roster to maintain, fully staffed due to these officers seeking full-time employment. A lot of times it's a turnover, and it's expected turnover. As far as the hiring goes, I just want to maybe use this opportunity as a platform to just express some of the difficulties of hiring. Perhaps the process is, I have found that it's rather inefficient if you will. I'll give you a for instance. I put in for a position for a dispatch position in August 21st, and that position was just approved last week. I'm lucky if that person still wants to be a dispatcher. So I just want to bring that to the attention of the board, so perhaps, maybe we can sit down with the committees and boards that are involved in this and maybe discuss, is there an efficient process, a more efficient process to hire people? Because those part-time employees in particular, that's money saving on my end.
And certainly in a few cases, I think we had tried to expedite things, knowing that, for example, finance or PQB was not going to be meeting right away, that we were trying to put forth a provisionary okay pending their meeting, I thought, on a lot of these, but.
I'm not assigning any type of fault.
Yeah.
I think the process perhaps could be more efficient for the actual appointment of personnel. And I can speak only for my department. I don't know if other departments are experiencing as well.
So was the fact that meetings weren't lining up, or was it
It was
issues
meetings not
with
lining up, not
paperwork not
quorums,
being the right form, the right
Sure,
time?
exactly. There was a lot of circumstances, but it has to go through a bureaucratic process that if perhaps we can minimize that process, it might expedite the hiring. And it's just a suggestion. I just would love to sit down, have that opportunity to sit down with you folks and the other boards and committees and discuss maybe a more efficient way to hire people. Sure.
Can I just say something about another instance is you guys approved PCFs last Tuesday, but Maureen signed it but didn't date it.
Okay.
So now they're all going to have to come back. So, I mean, there's got to be a better way to get stuff.
Yeah, and I know that, we had a change in the I'm not making excuses, but I know that there's been a change of form, and then people weren't filling the form out correct. I'm the liaison to the PQB.
By all means,
so,
I'm not, there's no in particular, it's the system, it's the process that I have identified, in my short time as the chief, but I could be wrong, but I just don't find it.
Okay.
I think there could be
We
more
should look at
efficient
that.
ways,
Okay.
that's all.
Do you have some suggestions we could consider? As a person who
I
goes through
think,
the process,
sure,
I'd be
I
interested
do,
in
I
your
do.
input.
I think that, and I don't know where it lies in as well as from the Mass General laws and so forth, but to cut out maybe a process with the Finance Committee, for instance. I mean, you look at the town accountant. The town accountant and probably the department head has the best idea of their budget versus the Finance Committee, because they don't have a complete review of it. They don't review it on a quarterly basis, and sometimes even on a weekly basis. And that would be one step I have thought of, that, where we could process that. The PPB board, I think, is essential, because, that's a check and balance that I think is important. And as far as the, again, I don't know the procedural law on this, but does the select board as a whole have to be the appointing authority? Can it be delegated to maybe one person versus the entire board? And those are just ideas or suggestions to streamline it.
That's a good idea.
Yep. Those are both good ideas.
That's a good idea.
Policy updating, I'm currently updating policies. I'm amending policies and implementing new policies. My overall goal is to meet Massachusetts police accreditation standards within a year. This is a voluntary commitment that I want to do, and my goal is to do that. We just recently implemented a few policies that are keeping us up to date, in particular on use of force, as well as social media, which I think is very important for a police department in particular to regulate both private and public social media forums with the police department, whether it's our personnel or on the police department itself. We recently were audited by the Criminal Justice Information System. With the hard work of Lieutenant Grober, we were able to pass that. We passed the audit with no issues, so we met the Federal Bureau of Investigation standards for maintaining criminal justice information. We also just recently Also, just recently, we voluntarily joined the reporting forum for the FBI for use of force. That, again, is a voluntary action on our part, so the FBI can monitor and have more accurate statistical data on use of force by police departments. Not all departments within the Commonwealth are involved in this, but I felt it was important that we do get involved in that. You're aware that we had a cruiser crash in the June of last year, or I should say, last year, 2019. Currently, with the due diligence of Mr. Gibson, we're in the process of getting the appropriate money for that cruiser for its replacement. As far as police operations, within the last 6 months, we've issued about 170 citations. About 25% of those were actual monetary citations, 15 were criminal citations, and about 60% were written warnings. About 45 reportable crashes since then in town. We updated our antiquated firearms that we had that were over 12 years old, and that was at no cost to the town with the exception of wages for the qualification on the firearms. We were able to trade in our old firearms as well as firearms that we deemed we didn't feel necessary, and it was at no cost. In fact, we were credited $180, and every officer in the department got a new firearm. Additionally, within the last 6 months, we transitioned to the capability of employing less than lethal munitions. Should the situation permit, we never had those. And I intend on continuing to add to this essential tool in the future with hopeful funding for tasers. With the increase of mental health disorders, I think it's very important to have that in our toolbox to prevent injury to the public, officers, as well as anybody suffering from any type of disorder. As far as critical incidences, we had the August and October storms. The August storm was a time frame, a 6-hour emergency period that required a lot of resources. The October 17th storm, that was a 16-hour emergency period. And most recently, on December 28th, the ice storm took out our repeater on Mount Tom. And on January 1st, about 1 o'clock in the morning, our radio system completely went dead. We weren't able to communicate on our radios. Fortunately, with the immediate assistance of Easthampton, they assisted us for a time frame where we could get back online, at least having those emergency radios available. And our repeater, we're in a building with the PVTA, and the PVTA has a generator. And through their cooperation, they allowed us to hook up to their generator, and we remained on the generator until January 4th. So from the 28th to the January 4th, we did not have a backup power with the exception of batteries that lasted only 3 days. So that's something that I'm recognizing needs to be addressed, in the future. Investigations in general, incidents of personal property crimes are on the seasonal decline. That's usually typical in the colder months. People seem to hunker down and stay inside. However, the department in particular, Sergeant David Neal, has remained very busy with criminal investigations. Within the last 4 months or so, he's applied for approximately 8 search warrants and has participated in as many as 3 in other jurisdictions through joint investigations. On December 26th, he and Sergeant Neal and Officer Latour executed a search warrant in Springfield and seized a stolen motorcycle from Southampton. I give Sergeant Neal a lot of credit, due diligence. His due diligence is solving a lot of crimes. He's an excellent investigator. I just want to use this opportunity to acknowledge that. Investigations into house breaks. 3 past house breaks have been solved recently and the suspect identified. This break and investigation has led to the suspect giving admissions to 8 other house breaks in the state of Vermont. Again, this was due to the due diligence of Sergeant Neal, who researched the stolen charm that he was able to locate with names on it, and he followed up on that, and it led to further break-ins, the solving of further break-ins in Vermont. We have approximately 4 additional open investigations of house breaks that are currently being investigated. We had 2 businesses in town that were broken into during the nighttime. One suspect has been identified and charged, and the other one is currently under investigation. A current case, and I'm intentionally being vague on this because it's under investigation, that Sergeant Neal's involved in with multiple jurisdictions. He spearheaded this, our department spearheaded this, and he took off with the investigation. As a result, currently in our possession, we have about $15,000 to $20,000 recovered stolen property. And again, I attribute that to Sergeant Neal's due diligence and his ability to investigate. Training this year, we adapted our training to an online course provided by the Massachusetts Police Institute versus the in-person in-service at the training council. We wanted to just change it up a little bit, and also some cost-saving measures, which allows us then to allocate some of that money towards specialized training for our officers versus just the mandatory 40 hours of training that they require. The police community outreach that we have, Officer Gove has started the DARE program with the fortunate assistance from funding from the PTO, another year of that. Sergeant Cook and Officer Latour are currently still involved in the DART program, which is the Drug Addiction and Recovery Team. That's sponsored through a grant. And they continue to assist people who are suffering from addictions within the community. Our toy drive this winter was very, very successful. We collaborated with the Southampton Lions Club, and approximately 1,500 toys were donated and collected at the Southampton Police Department throughout a 2-week period, as well as the Suffolk Cruiser event. It served about 800 families in the immediate area.
That's great.
So,
I saw that on Facebook.
you know, kudos to the Southampton Lions Club for their hard work. We held a coffee with a cop at Bashista's Apple Orchard. We're going to plan on doing one sooner than later. I hope we get more people in attendance. I think it's important for the community to actually talk with our officers in a social environment. Lieutenant Grober of the Southampton Police Department, in collaboration with the Council on Aging and the Hampshire County Sheriff's Department, the Triad program, installed lock boxes on residents' homes for ease of access and to access their home for emergencies. So essentially what they did, if people that wanted to sign up, they have a lock box outside their house. We're the only ones that have access to the key, not even the homeowner. And in the event that this person should fall and require assistance, nobody has to break into the house. We have access to the house. The drug take-back and drug kiosk this year, we collected about 284 pounds in Southampton of prescription drugs. You'll see in November, some of our officers looked a little motley with their crews, with their shaving, rather. They had some beards. That was a program called No Shave November, which supports the home-based organization for veterans. So if you see them, it was for a good cause. You know, if you ever had any questions. Officer Scott Gove continues to act as a school resource officer at Hampshire Regional High School. I hope that this continues to get funded. In fact, I will be submitting a letter requesting some signatures for you folks to support that through grants.
I think it's on our agenda later, too.
Okay, all right, good. Him being up there or any other school resource officer is very important, just not only for the interaction, but the safety of the students considering today's climate. I think it's very important that he's there. As far as the communications department, we're right on budget. We're about 50% spent. I applied for and received a grant from the 911 State 911 Department, and I received about $30,000 for a support and incentive, as well as about an additional $6,400 for wages and $4,800 in expenses for training specifically. So that obviously is very helpful for the budget. Radio consoles, which we had an article in the last town meeting, those are slated to be installed probably within the next 2 weeks. So that's very important. We're currently noticing, our radios having problems. We have to, in the last 2 weeks, we've had to contact our radio repair several times just to come out and reset the current consoles. So it's coming at the perfect time because I think it's gonna crash sooner or later. Yeah. And essentially, that's it. Do you folks have any questions for me?
That's a great report.
Yeah, it's a very good report. Quick question, on the grant you just mentioned, the 30,000 is going to be used for what?
That's reimbursement. It's a reimbursement grant. And so what essentially happens is, for the wages for dispatchers, we can request reimbursement for their wages,
I see.
both in operational wages
Oh,
and
wow.
training wages.
Okay, that's great, okay. And then just under the number of citations and crashes and so
Sure.
forth, particular issues with our citations, what are we most at fault for?
Well, you know, it's
Is it our bad
typically,
driving, or is it our?
It's speeding, usually.
Yeah.
What we find is, and what we find is that the average is about 60 miles an hour over the speed limit that our officers are citing people for.
Wow.
For the most part.
16.
16. For
16.
below that, it's usually a motor vehicle stop, and first encounter is usually just either a written warning or a verbal warning.
Yeah. And then last question, any particular areas of town where we seem to be having more accidents than others? Any
I was gonna
particular
ask that too.
intersections or?
No, primarily on Route 10, I would have to say, is where the majority, if you were to classify where they're mostly happening, you know, as far as, as percentage-wise,
Yeah.
Route 10 has the greatest amount. And a lot of that has to do with shopping plazas and so forth,
Sure,
and just a disruption in natural flow of traffic.
Have you, I've been here 10 years now, and I've seen a significant increase in traffic on Route 10.
Sure.
You're feeling the same way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, we're going to have more incidents
I'm sure we will, yes.
proportionately. Okay.
I have a question just about the generator. Is that for generator at the police station or
No.
generator, like?
It's actually at the repeater building on Mount Tom.
Mount Tom, okay. That's what I
Myself
thought, but
and
I was just-
two other officers hiked Mount
Yeah.
in the snow. We drove up as far as we could, just because we've never been there. We never knew what actually it entailed.
Okay.
And we were provided with access to it, naturally because our repeater's in there. And we soon recognized that we're only on battery standby, battery backup power, which that lasted about 2.5, 3 days. And a lot depends on your draw of the use of the radios. So if this were to be a critical incident and our radios are going off constantly because we have a lot of radio traffic, a battery could last a lot less than that. So I think it's either imperative that we collaborate with PVTA and maybe get a
Okay.
MOU with them and see if we can, they are allowing us to do it right now.
Because everyone, yeah, they helped us out.
But they helped us out, but that may change. They may see that maybe it's causing too much of a draw, or there's a concern that they have. So it's something that I have to explore in the future, because otherwise I think it's very important to get our own generator up there or have it moved to another building. I know other antennas, radio frequencies from other agencies, they're actually in another part on Mount Tom, another building, and it's maintained by the Hoyle Gas and Electric, and they use their own, they just pay a monthly fee to use their services and their generator.
Okay.
Which I think would probably be a safer route, considering that it's Hoyle Gas and Electric.
Yeah, the utility.
And the current company that maintains our repeater is a private company, and it's a nationwide company. So I think you'll get a better service out of Hoyle Gas and Electric.
Okay. Got it.
But it's something that I have to still explore.
Very good, thanks.
Thanks. I think, what,
Sure.
Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road, and if you'll just answer this for the public, especially the people watching, tell me where the box is for the Take Back the Drugs and how you're advertising it. And I'm going to say it's really important for people to go through their medicine cabinets and look for drugs that are out of date, inappropriate, ordered maybe when they had some surgery once, shouldn't be there anymore, and how important that service is.
Sure. It's very important, because we don't want that, it becomes an environmental concern. We have a kiosk in the police department. You don't have to, identify yourself. Nobody has to identify themselves. They just can go in there with approved prescription medication that can go in there. There's certain medication that can't go in there. In particular, hypodermic needles wouldn't be in there, and some other medication that's listed on the actual box itself. But you just go into the front lobby of the police department, and it's just like a mailbox. You open up the container and just throw it in, no questions asked. We recommend, if people are concerned about privacy, take the labels off the medication.
yeah, de-identify it.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep. Okay,
And John Workman, Fire Chief. Last but not least.
I don't know, it was quite a report. John Workman, Fire Chief. Just to really, PD does a great job. Some of the drug take back, I really appreciate that you mentioned that. We're getting stuff off the streets, out of medicine cabinets, where it just has the potential to be abused. It's a great program that they do, and certainly, I just think that, from that full report, he's done a great job for the community with that. And I've seen it be successful in other programs. My wife had done a program in South Hadley, which the police had then really taken over on a statewide level, and helping out. It was amazing the amount of medications that you will get. 200 pounds is a lot of medications. As far as hypodermic needles go, the Board of Health collects hypodermic needles. So if anybody has sharps, they can go to Board of Health and get sharp containers. All hypodermic needles should be in sharp containers for bringing them in.
I actually just thought of another question with regard to this, and maybe you can answer this.
Yeah.
Because he had mentioned this. There's two concerns with this, right? It's that the medicines could possibly get into the wrong hands, especially if they're narcotic related.
Yeah,
and
abuse,
then children and
potential
stuff
for
like
abuse.
that. But then I think he mentioned something about the environment.
Yeah,
So there must be, somebody might want to speak to that, and that, like, just to say it's probably better practice to bring them down to this cabinet, even if they have no chance of getting into the wrong hands, or even if they're not even narcotic related, that simply disposing them in any other way. So I'm not going to give examples because I don't want to.
No, actually, it's a great one. And
flushing them down the toilet is probably not a good idea.
Flushing them down the toilet is actually a major problem environmentally,
Yeah, exactly.
just because so many medications are estrogen-based, and that estrogen doesn't break down through a sewer treatment plant if we had one, which we don't have one in Southampton. Right. So flushing them down the toilet, although it rids the household of the medication, it does present an environmental impact that the program that he's got in town here helps to eradicate. So good point. Yeah, very good point.
That includes pet medications.
Yes, any medications, absolutely.
Just wanted to get that.
Yeah, no, perfect form for it. Excellent. So for us, call volumes for 2019 were about 677, which is just slightly up from last year. Last year was about 669. We do about 461 EMS calls, 216 fire-related calls. As far as mutual aid stats for ambulance, we've provided mutual aid to Easthampton 6 times. We've gone to Westhampton twice, Montgomery once, and we've gone to Westfield once. We've received mutual aid 32 times. Easthampton provided to us, SFD received mutual aid. Easthampton, my numbers are off here, so I just need to self-correct. Easthampton provided mutual aid to us 37 times, which included 18 intercepts and 16 transports. Westfield provided mutual aid 4 times, and each 4 of those times they were primary of transport. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like tonight, just prior to coming in, we had, well, there was 3 calls. There was one that was very dramatic and used a lot of resources from our ambulance. The ambulance had returned back to town, was trying to get itself back in service, was halfway through that process when another call had come in for a fire engine call. So the fire engine had gone down, and then as the fire engine was en route, we got another medical call, which halfway through switching from one ambulance to the other, we couldn't cover that call. We did send a crew down in an ambulance that was out of service to assist with Easthampton, who'd come in for that. So we don't have the staffing like Easthampton has or Westfield has, where we have a number of people that can take a number of different ambulances. We have one ambulance pretty much that we keep staffed, and then we back it up with personnel as best we can, and with the second ambulance as best we can. And that's where those numbers come from, and that's why we sometimes give it, because even when you, like Easthampton has 3 or 4 ambulances, they still are going to need mutual aid at times, which we provide, and same thing with Westfield. So.
Chief, just a quick question, because
Sure.
I don't know much about it. With the idea of the mutual aid, is that something that's a formal agreement between
Yes.
Southampton and Westfield, or Southampton and Easthampton?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because depending on what it is, if, let's say with Easthampton, if we have, like, some calls require an additional paramedic, or if our staffing, if we've got two basics on it don't have a paramedic that's on that shift because we just per diem, and we occasionally will have that scenario. If they come in just with a paramedic to assist and ride the truck, they charge us a flat rate fee. We still benefit from the call monetarily because we can bill out the full amount for that call and pay a flat rate fee to whichever community comes in to assist us, whether it be Easthampton or Westfield.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I was just curious how that worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's a very good question. And if we don't have the staffing for whatever reason, or if our ambulance is out and they do the cover, then they would cover just primary, and all the billing and everything goes through that community that came in. So that happens also occasionally. Our staffing, we're probably at 43 members on the roster right now. 37 of those members are cross-trained as firefighters. We have 24 paramedics, 12 EMTs, and 7 first responders. Our equipment status is we have engine 3, engine 4. We've repurposed the old Car 1 as a utility vehicle. We had previously had a utility vehicle that was a 1986 utility truck. That was taken out of service in probably 2015 because we robbed parts from it in order to keep our old brush truck going. So we have been without an official utility vehicle since probably 2015. When the new Car 1 administrative vehicle came in, we still needed a utility vehicle to carry just trash. You're not going to put in an ambulance or administrative or an engine. So we repurposed the old Car 1 as a utility truck. And I know that there's been some stuff that has come out in regards to that. I think the only thing that really was kind of a surprise to me and might have been a surprise to folks is it came out so beautiful that everybody thought we got a brand new truck. We didn't get a brand new truck. That truck has still got 160,000 miles on it. It'll never be put back in service as a frontline emergency response vehicle, but it will serve the purposes to the town as a utility vehicle to carry hose, to bring people to classroom, to take the trash to the landfill. So it serves a good purpose. So if you're wondering why we got a new truck, it's because the paint job really did come out. And they wasn't even, the paint job, they did some rocker work and they buffed it. So it's actually not even that much new paint.
Is that the one, I think you told us at one point, there was some story about some truck losing its tire or something?
Yes, that's the one.
Is that the one? Yeah.
That's the one. That's why it won't be an emergency response vehicle.
Assuming the tires are now new tires.
Yeah, well, we actually didn't even replace that tire because why run that risk? You know, I mean, that's not going anywhere, you know, that it can't call for assistance from, you know, someone in town to help. So there's no need to really put a spare tire in it, and it takes apart because there's some rust on some of the frame that couldn't be addressed. But honestly, I see it as having still some good years of service, even with its high mileage for the purpose that it's at. So actually look forward to that truck as being a good member of the fleet. And like I say, it replaced a truck that went out of service in 2015.
So we've actually disposed of that truck now?
I don't know if it's disposed of. It was going to, yeah, it doesn't function because we robbed all the parts out of it for the brush truck. So the brush truck is disposed of because that was actually,
The old brush truck.
The old brush truck. Correct, the old brush truck was disposed of because it was a DCR vehicle and went back to them.
Okay.
So, but it was the same model as our utility truck because they were both Army surplus when we originally got them. So we were robbing pieces out of the utility truck to keep the old brush truck going. And the old Car 1 was a pickup truck, and we could utilize it for some of the trash and picking up hose and those sorts of things. So that's why even when I originally had presented, the plan was never to get rid of the old Car 1 just because it has a good lifespan for us, even with its high mileage. So in case people are wondering about that.
And that was a point we should have clarified with you at the time when we were discussing the purchase of.
You know, and I wish because I tried to be clear that I wasn't getting rid of it. I mean, I know I spent time with that, just very trying to clearly say that although we were getting one vehicle, we were getting rid of 2 vehicles. Which is absolutely we did. We got rid of the old. No, it was the assumption was probably that it was that one, and it wasn't that one. Even though it's old, it's not quite dead.
It's not there.
So
how many more years do you think it has?
I don't know. We're gonna, you know, it's one of those ones you hate to spend the money on a new utility truck, just because it's. it's a utility truck. It's not, it's not a...
Used every day, and.
It's not used every day. It's not a frontline emergency response vehicle. So I don't, as long as we can get out of it. So if it keeps running without any major influx of money, we're going to keep it on the road. As long as it can be, safe and pass inspection and those kinds of things. So I'm hoping we'll get some good time. I bet we get a good amount of time. I mean, trucks these days, you can put, highway department, pickup trucks, 200,000-300,000 miles on some of those.
Oh, we don't have that much, but we've got
I know you're working on it, though.
one
Yeah.
that's back and we'll run anymore without a lot of money.
Yeah, and you use yours every day in different capacities, so I'm hoping to get a good amount of time. I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm hoping that it'll last even longer, especially now that we did some of the rot, took care of some of the rock panel rot and stuff that we'd had. Let's see, of course, our brush truck has been great. Equipment purchases, we've had money that we spend out of an equipment allotment, and we've actually, to this point, gotten 6 new sets of gear this year, which is tremendous. Still have some more to go. It's one of those ongoing things that we finally have in our budget to replace gear each year as we move forward. But had gotten a little behind from some of the shortfalls that we'd had in budget that were made up for in some capital expense. So we're now getting some of that gear in, which is always a good thing. It's nice when you can outfit the men and women to do the job that in good gear that will help protect them. So that's it's nice to
One
have.
thing tied into that.
Sure.
A couple of the articles I've seen lately talk about other towns being able to get grants from the state for new turnout gear. There are over 100 towns that got some.
Yeah, most of the grants that come in through the federal government. They're FEMA grants. I've written some in the past for a community where I'd gotten a bunch of gear. The only problem that that's great when you can get it. The only potential problem that you can have is then all your gear, you get $300,000 worth of gear that then
Comes up all at once.
comes up all at once the next time around. And if there's no federal grants, then you got all your
This
gear.
might have been a state grant through the governor. I think that there were over 100 towns at some point that got new turnout gear. I think Goshen was one of them. Huntington or somebody got the washing facility and.
Yeah, we'd written,
doing some of those
for that monies, that was lesser monies. So there was some money that was available for some gear, but it was only like half a set of gear is what it kind of translated to. It wasn't a lot of money. We actually had gone in with a grant application with Easthampton Fire Department and were awarded just over $6,000 for a gear washer, which is, if you looked at budget, I don't know how much you've seen budget stuff this year, but a lot of the problem that I'm having, I'm sure other folks are too, I'm sure PD is also as well, is we're not meeting a lot of the OSHA requirements in regards to facilities. And the challenge is, how much do you put into facility costs when you know that the prudent money is to spend it on a new public safety complex? And so it's not a problem until it's a problem, but it's a concern that I have because I'm responsible for that, and I want my folks to be safe, and everybody here does. But I share it with you so that the town shares it as a whole, because at some point we could run into a problem with that, and everybody should be aware. So there's a lot of money in for capital requests in the capital plan, if you've got a chance to look at any of that, that really addresses a lot of those sort of OSHA requirements and station upgrades that I don't see that, I don't know how we'd find the money for it. I mean, honestly, the money for that really would be better suited in a bond bill for a public safety complex. So.
Yeah, and this, I've got the article here. I don't know if this was actually something that the governor put in his budget or whatever, but there's over $400,000 that went to some 70 communities for the washing gear particularly. So
and they
various communities really benefited. So, but I don't know if that means that somebody has to apply for it.
Yes.
Or it's just designated to certain
Well,
communities.
they had limits on how much you could get. So when we went in with Easthampton, we actually had gotten $6,416.73 is the number that we'd gotten from them. They found recently, there was an email that came out today that said that they have another $200,000 that they're looking to put directly into gear washing for departments. The problem that the fire service is running into is that a lot of what we're finding, I mean, of course, it's dangerous to go into a burning house. It's a dangerous environment. Firefighters certainly can get hurt in that type of environment, and it's a direct causal relationship that we see when one does. What we're finding in the fire service is that we're losing people due to cancer, and the cancer percentages of firefighters is far over and above general population. And it's because as we go into what they call an IDLH environment, immediately dangerous to life and health. When we go into an IDLH environment, there's so many pollutants in the air that then come into your contact with your gear. It used to be, when I was first coming through, it was cool to have dirty gear and to look like you were fighting lots of fires. And I fought my share, and I would bring my gear home and I would put it in the front hallway, proud as a peacock that I had my gear that I could jump into. But unfortunately, it's 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. It means that although it looked cool, made me feel good, I was exposing my family to carcinogens, even in putting it in cars. It really becomes apparent, I mean, it was always pretty clear that you shouldn't wash any of the stuff that you've been into a fire with because it absorbs it all through your clothes, in with your household laundry, just because all those carcinogens then get into the wash with the family's wash. So the gear thing is paramount concern for me. It's an OSHA requirement, it's a paramount concern. It's not a direct correlation. You don't see a firefighter drop because he didn't wash his gear. But with the statistics and the amount of cancer rates going up, it's one of those things that the fire service needs to identify and work hard to protect their own through diligence of washing gear. So the grant that we wrote with Easthampton goes a long way. It doesn't, we don't have a facility to put one in. We've already had some unwritten memorandums of understanding with them to bring gear to them. But every time we brought our gear to them, they did not have a gear washing system that was tremendously functional. So it would, we would just, in our gear going there, would take out, their equipment couldn't be used for a couple of days because it takes that long to actually dry some of this. So some of the newer equipment that we've gotten through some of the grant funding will make that process quicker. So, so that joint, from that monies that you're talking about, that joint money that came to Easthampton with Southampton is why we got it. That'll go a long way towards making gear safer for guys. Sorry for long-winded, but I want to touch on that grant also in regards to that. Let's see. OSHA concerns we talked about. It's just not a fun one. We had a state ambulance inspection that went very smoothly, probably the best one that we've had since I've been here. We've really gotten our processes down well. We have a great group of paramedics and EMTs that work hard, putting the time in to make sure our ambulances are clean, because they're very tough on cleanliness and making sure that, under every little cushion is scrubbed. And that we have all the equipment applied and installed in a way that passes a pretty rigorous state inspection. So that went very well this year. We have ongoing programs with our student awareness of fire education. We've done some like rides to schools for the PTO and folks like that, for some community-based organizations, we offer something that they can raffle off to the community of the fire department, giving a kid a ride to school. It's a great program. It promotes community. I think it works very well. So we've done some of that. We've been into schools for some of their educational things. We have some senior safe programs where we've gone in with Board of Health and things like that to present for, to slip and fall. We've worked with police department and Triad for delivering sand buckets We are ongoing and have purchased through different funds for the signs for addresses, because one of the bigger frustrations is when you're out on the road at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to find an address that isn't there. So for years now, since I've been here, probably before me, I know Triad initiated with fire to go and do the signage. And we actually, with Mike Goyette, previous chief, I'd gone and planted signs with him for some of that 22 Pomeroy Meadow, which had really needed an upgrade badly. So that goes pretty well. EMD stuff, and I didn't think I was going to talk this long, but I have. EMD stuff, I just want to give kudos to Charlie Kinnicky and the work that he's done as emergency manager. I think one of the concerns that I've had ongoing since I came here was with Norris School and some of the design. The school was built in the 60s, and it never had the design concern at that time for some of the current problems that we deal with as far as active shooter, some of the hazardous material things. It just wasn't the same concerns that we have now. One of the problem areas in regards to that school is just a rear entrance door, which is also a major exit, which is also an HVAC intake for the whole entire school, and a gas meter. As we focused on that, because that was been a concern, I've done some things to try and clear that area. Charlie had then taken that ball and had gotten the gas company to put some safety bollards that protect the gas meter there from impact at no cost to the town. So that was really a good thing. And it's hard to describe, and it may not seem like a big deal because nothing ever happened with it. But there was a 4-inch gas main that you would have had to have found the gas shut-off on the street in order to shut it down. And a 4-inch main puts out a lot of gas. And it's a major exit discharge plus an HVAC intake. So that was a great thing to see happen. And certainly I know lots of people were behind that, including the school. The school has been very responsive to our concerns in regards to Knox boxes. Walked around with the police department resource officer just to identify some of the Knox boxes we have, some of the door entry marking systems. We have a great relationship with police department. I think we're lucky to have such a good PD, DPW here in town that we can partner with. And we've seen improvements in the safety at the school. And even though it's an old building, it's functional, and we are addressing some concerns that keep it safer.
If I could just touch on that.
Absolutely.
Some of these storms that we've had, in my 25 years here at the police department.
Yeah, just so everybody can hear.
We never experienced the collaborative effort for storm response or any type of critical incident that we have now. Any type of major storm, the chief, myself, Randall, and Charlie are in the emergency operations room, and we pool all our resources together to make it as most efficient as possible. And that has never happened before. So like Chief says, the relationships that we have, the working relationships they're rare.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So that's longer than I thought I was going to talk. A lot of stuff. Any questions on anything?
Just to fill in a little bit about what Charlie did, I'm sure you know this, but I think it all came. He told me the story on the phone. He said basically he was putting together this tabletop, and he did a very nice job doing it. He invited, I think, Holyoke Gas and Electric, and the scenario that he was trying to paint out was a main break, like somebody backing into the.
Which was easily feasible.
Yeah, and so once Holyoke Gas and Electric figured out, like, okay, well, this is a scenario. Why are we talking about this scenario? They came and looked at their main, and they discovered, oh, well, we don't have any barricades in front of it, so they just
Yeah, it really is an exposure.
put them in.
Yeah,
So it was
yeah,
nice.
yeah. That worked
I saw
perfectly.
pictures of it. It looks
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, that was good. And it'll still make a good tabletop because there's plenty of concerns still in that area.
Yeah.
But that one is a whole lot less, and it would have been horrendous had it been an issue. And it could have easily been just a plow that would have taken that out. So those added protection goes a long way to making that a safer area.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
So continuing with reports, we'll go to Select Board reports. Who wants to start?
Okay, I'll go. Okay, last night, Hampshire Regional High School had its meeting, and at that meeting, they had invited from each of the 5 districts represented, well, the full Select Board membership and members of the Finance Committee. And the purpose was to communicate some preliminary information about what we can look forward to or what we will expect in the fiscal year 21, and all of that planning has already started. So we're well underway. Matt attended, I attended, Ed was there, and I think that was it, in addition to our regular school committee members. The principal provided detailed information about the planned, and these are planned, capital improvements that she's had on the books in her 10-year plan, in addition to unexpected and necessary building and safety repairs and improvements. She also shared information on staffing needs for what she anticipates for next year, and the unknown factor of the results of the contract negotiations that are currently underway. She identified curricular and other school enhancements, which, doing my little rough math sitting at the table, there was somewhere around $500,000, I believe. Somewhere close to that, plus or minus. Yes, no. Anyway, but all of that would be appropriated to each of the participating towns based on enrollment. It was a great heads-up session. A full draft of the fiscal 21 budget will be presented to the school committee at its February meeting, and then at their March meeting, they'll be taking a vote to pass it. The principal reported that fiscal year 20 budget is essentially on track. A couple of little surprises, needing a new tractor and so forth, but I feel pretty confident in what she had to say last night. The business manager described the fact that they've entered into a 2-year agreement with an alternate energy supplier, and over the 2-year period, they expect to save approximately $34,000 in utility costs, which is a very substantial chunk of money when we're looking for nickels and dimes everywhere. Some other really good news that the school got: Hampshire Regional High School was named to the Advanced Placement Honor Roll. It was among 250 high schools in the United States and one of 12 in Massachusetts to have that designation. So I think we'd be very proud of the work that they do. Okay, they also received a commendation for their college and career readiness program. So 2 really good pieces of news about the quality of services at the school. Happy to report that the renovation to the entrance to increase security and safety has been completed, and this was made possible through a $60,000 grant that we received, and that grant proposal was written by the principal, which led to the discussion of whether or not Hampshire Regional should consider engaging the services of a grant writer, looking at what's on the horizon in terms of big items that they absolutely need, and if there's resources out there that we could tap that would save all the town's money and bring the school up to the level that they would like to see it. So no decision's been made, but it's good that the conversation is going about how it'll happen. There's still, among the 5 participating, we're 1 district, but 5 elementary schools. They're still considering a camera security program in the schools, and right now they're looking at to create a policy whereby the security cameras would retain the recordings for 15 days, so that if any incidents come up and they need to go back either to verify an incident or to investigate an incident, they have a 15-day period in which they can make the request and recover the footage that they need in order to resolve the situation. The dilemma, not dilemma, but all 5 districts have to agree to the same terms. So that's why for us, sometimes it takes longer to get to the end because you're dealing with 5 separate towns. But that's underway and moving along. The other thing I just want to mention about the high school is, and we'll be dealing with it later, is that we've been asked, the select board, to submit a letter in support of another grant application for school resource officer that would be shared among 5 towns. So they're looking for funding for that, asking each of the 5 select boards to write that letter in support of that application, and hopefully it will be funded. Okay, did I miss anything on the school from last night? Sure.
Margaret Larson, 9 David, Hampshire Regional School Committee. So just with regards to the budget, what the principal has done is present a list of required and recommended items. So if you kind of look at the totality of those, yes, the total is getting upwards of $500,000. Again, those are things that we would like to have. We don't necessarily expect to have them, but there are a number of items that we're required to have just to meet student needs. With regards to the grant writer, so in case people are curious about the kinds of things we're looking at, one of the things we would love to do is eventually overhaul our food system, and so it would be wonderful to have a greenhouse, and there are grants available for things like that. They did a teacher survey of kind of a wish list, and that ended up being one of the top 3 items, is could we do more of a farm to table kind of idea so that we're getting fresher food for our students, because that obviously impacts their learning as well. And then with regard to the budget too, we are experimenting this year. We've thrown it out, the idea of separating out some of the very large capital items. So I think the principal has done an outstanding job over the past few years of developing a 10-year capital plan. And it includes things like textbooks and laptop computers, things that we need. A new textbook system is $50,000. And we have to replace those in order to meet curricular demands and demands for MCAS, et cetera. But then there is an item such as our HVAC system, which we expect will take about $173,000. And we cannot accommodate that in our capital plan. Mostly we're able to pay for items in our capital plan out of our excess and deficiencies fund. It's not possible to pay for some of those things. A water tank repair for the lining of the water tank. So we're trying to get creative with that. If there's a way that we can either have that be part of the capital plan for the towns or part of a separate warrant, we're just examining some of those things. Now, I just picked up the giant thing that Ed left for me for capital improvement, and it's daunting. So I'm not sure how all that works, but we are trying to be creative in how we're looking at that. So the next step for the budget is we have a meeting on Monday where we're actually getting numbers, and the principal is more than happy to either come to a select board meeting or set up a separate meeting where we can get in a nitty-gritty with the finance committee and just have it more transparent this year.
No, she's done a great job. She sent out the quarterly budget report to everyone on the select board, so she's providing a lot of information, and hopefully among us we can come up with some useful recommendations that we can be of assistance. So that's it on the school. That was just one.
No,
I'm sorry.
I just want to say too that I think her written reports are just excellent. I mean, they're very helpful, especially for those that are not involved so much with the school committee.
Right.
It's very, very helpful to know what's going on.
Yes, good communicator. Okay, the next group is the bylaw committee, and we'll be meeting this Thursday at 1 o'clock. There is an agenda item on the bylaws that have been drafted for discussion this evening, and that's later on the agenda. And then finally, the master plan implementation committee is also scheduled to meet this Thursday at 7 o'clock, and it will be the first in a series of joint meetings with the planning commission to review some of the strategies and goals and shared responsibility in helping to implement them. So the first of that series of meetings will be this Thursday, upstairs, second floor. Okay, thank you.
Great. Chris?
Well, since our last select board meeting on Thursday, there hasn't been too many opportunities, but there was a Conservation Commission meeting last night. We spent time talking largely about the situation on the Manhan Trail, issues in the down trees, and how we were going to handle some of that. We have had a couple of arborists come in and take a look, have walked the trail and given us some ideas of what the cost might be. So we're working with the idea of putting some information together toward approaching CPC and trying to figure out what we need to do for other rehabilitation processes for not only Manhan but other trails, and where we might find some money maybe through Mass Trails for some of the other work that's needed. And then other than that, there'll be a CPC, Community Preservation Committee meeting tomorrow evening at 5:30, where we're going to be discussing at least some of the initial 2 or 3 potential proposals that have we've been given a concept, I guess I would say, earlier about some projects that people would like to do, committees would like to do in town. And so we'll be discussing those a little bit further tomorrow evening.
Great.
That's it.
I have no updates from PQB. However, Chief, I'll take your comments and we'll discuss them at the next meeting that we have at PQB. No updates from the school. Haven't had a meeting since this past Thursday. And Capital Committee, just as a reminder, is meeting for the first time to discuss the capital improvements to the town on Thursday, January 9th at 5 p.m. That's it for me. Ed?
Relatively short, since we just met 5 days ago. The administrative kickoff meeting with MEMA for the hazard mitigation grant to move the water main to the Manhan River Route 10 bridge was held yesterday morning, Monday, January 6th. The meeting went well and was very informative. We are now ready for the design, procurement, completion of the design, and then construction bidding for this project. I will be attending a mediation session for the Joint Labor Management Committee on Friday, January 10th in the afternoon in Agawam. And we're still looking for 2 town resident voters to volunteer and serve on the Finance Committee until the May 20th annual town election, and also 3 resident volunteers for the Conservation Commission to fill the current 3 vacancies on that committee, and 1 resident to fill the current vacancy on the Park Commission until the next annual town election in May of 2021. In May of 2020 it would be. We are also looking for 1 resident to serve as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals and 1 resident to serve as an alternate member on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And as Chief Illingsworth mentioned earlier, after a good period of time, Chief Illingsworth and I were able to work with our Maya claims technician, and the town will be receiving the full value of the replacement costs for a 2024 Explorer Cruiser, less our $1,000 deductible from the insurance, rather than the original offer, which would have left us about $9,000 short of the actual replacement costs, since there were not any 2019 model year Ford Explorer Cruisers available when our cruiser was totaled in the accident in June. And then upcoming select board meetings, January 21st, and then in February, the 4th, the 11th, which will be just before the special town meeting starts, and then again on the 18th.
Great. Old business, Hampshire Regional Quarterly Budget Narrative. I think, did you think you summarized that already, Francine?
Well, between Margaret and I think we got there.
I think we summarized that. Any update, Ed, on East? Anything to talk about on East Street Bridge or?
Yes, VHB is shooting for January 17th to send the plans to Mass DOT for their review. And once that's done, they will start on the permitting process, which could be fairly extensive for this project.
Okay. Great. New business. Approval of contract between town and DEP and Waste Management Recycle America, LLC for material recycling facility. Randall. Nope.
So yes, you have questions?
Well, I mean, if you want to explain.
So we have a contract with the Springfield Materials Recycling Facility. They're the ones that process our recyclables. We have two waste streams. We have a paper stream and then a mixed container stream. Our contract is run out and we're signing a new one. There are some changes in the new one. Historically, we've received revenue for recyclables. Those days are gone. The market has switched. Nobody wants recyclables now. So we have to pay to get rid of our recyclables now.
Okay.
That's a very big difference.
What's the swing?
That's a great question. Pretty rough calculations. Based on past tonnages, looks like it may be, and realize that there's so many unknowns here. The new contract has a floating fee schedule based on commodity price.
Okay.
I based it on the getting nothing for our recyclables.
Okay.
It could be upwards of $30,000 for the fiscal.
How much?
30,000.
30,000.
Okay. Okay.
And that's
they're-
based on the 17 tons, or 17,000 tons per year? That they
No, the
quoted?
17,000 I think is for
Sorry,
their minimum.
17,000 tons, that's the minimum?
That's the minimum from all communities using the MRF, I believe.
Okay.
For us, it's I don't know what the actual tonnage are. I have it back in the office.
And how long's the contract? I think it's 5.
It looks 5 years.
I think it's 3 with 2 one-year extensions. Is
It's
that right?
2-year extension,
Okay.
Yeah, it's 5
Yeah.
year, 5 years,
For 5
starting
years.
July 1st, it says.
and it looked like, I just did the one calculation, like a 2.5% increase from year to year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, looks like about that.
I mean, they didn't specify, they just gave the rate, so.
There are a
Back
lot
up.
of unknowns. It's very advantageous for the person running the MRF. They don't hold a lot of the downside. We do, but there don't seem to be a lot of other viable options to go with. A lot of the communities who have used the MRF are going to continue to do so. I think everybody's crossing their fingers and hoping for a swing in the market.
Brenda, one thing that I'm just confused about, because I just don't know anything about it, is the ability for the contractor to allow us to discontinue delivering glass. Why is glass such a,
Because
Particular
the glass market has fallen out completely. And they would rather not have any glass, but in order for us to do something else with it, we'd have to find something else to do with it, and nobody wants
so
it.
it is included in this contract, that
It
we would
is.
still be delivering the glass? Yeah.
Yeah.
But if that should change, because that was one of the questions that I had, are our facilities adequate for what potentially could be the amount of sorting that we have to do if they exclude glass at some point in time?
Well, this contract, they don't exclude
I know,
glass.
but I'm saying, looking ahead,
I don't, there are so many variables, I don't even want to think about hypotheticals down the road. We would have to adapt somehow, but
yeah.
And isn't there, somewhere, I think I read something about a materials recovery program from the state or something? Do we not get any money from the state for recyclables then? Under like the Green Communities Grant or something like that?
we receive a small amount, and it supplements the transfer station budget. We get that every year through, we apply for a grant, and it encompasses both the sustainable materials. We get recycling dividends,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, dividends. Yeah.
and then we also get small-scale initiatives. I think it's about $3,500 a year. It's pretty small in the big
Yeah.
picture, but I go for every
Something.
dime I can get.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And just out of curiosity, do we have an idea about, with the number of people in town, about sort of the percentage of how many residents actually use the transfer station versus private haulers?
I don't know how many use private haulers, but about 1,400 use the transfer station.
1,400 households?
Households, yeah.
It seems high.
That's
What's that?
even half.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay,
right around.
Close to half, yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
I don't think.
So, thank you. I don't have any more
I don't have
questions.
any more
I just-
questions either.
We're going to see where the next year takes us before really, well, budget's coming up, so we'll hit that when it comes, but
Yeah, well, this is quite a complicated document.
it is. Well, try to absorb it when you have no idea where the market's going to go. I mean,
Yeah.
Is this, so given that we have no idea, I mean, the market could go either way. I mean, it could get worse. too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no out for either party in any of this?
I'm not a contract expert, which is why the select
Early
board has to
termination.
sign them. I don't think there is. I think it's a 3-year, you're in, and then you have the option to sign on for the
Another two.
To the extensions, I think.
extensions.
And generally, for what's been done in the past, what the DEP actually goes out and, shall we say, procures for us seems to be the most reasonable for municipalities.
Okay. Great. Do I have an emotion to approve this contract?
Yeah, so moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have to sign this, Ed?
Yes.
Do you want me to sign it now?
Just circle around to something about the glass, Chris. There's a alternatives meeting next week that I'll be attending, so I should have some more information about that, but it's a lot to take in. See where it goes.
Thanks for staying for that, Randall.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Lucy needs this, right, Ed? Does Lucy need this one too?
No. No, that one just comes back to me.
Okay.
I left your space on top.
What else? Is there any way to help her out?
She's here for the bylaws now.
Okay.
She's a member of that committee.
Glutton for punishment. Glutton for punishment.
I didn't know if you had to stay for a signing of something, and I was going to try to help you out. All right, now we are up to Easthampton Media contract renewal discussion. Further discussion on the Easthampton contract renewal. Hello.
Good evening, Jen Ramsey, Easthampton Media.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
So it's only been a few days.
Have you had a chance to go back and meet with your people since we met? Or?
No, so I was waiting to get the red line copy from you guys so that we can.
Haven't seen
I
our
haven't seen
feedback
it.
yet?
No, town council was on vacation through last week, so have not gotten anything back from them as of yet.
Yeah.
But it was put back on here in case you had any other questions or anything had popped up also between the last meeting and this one.
I mean, I just want to make sure that town council is incorporating, maybe we need to re-reference our minutes from last meeting, but Rini brought up a bunch of things that.
The 5% holdback.
Yeah, the 5% holdback was one. Some comparisons to some of the Easthampton contract, which I know that you don't necessarily agree with, but that we want town council to look at. And I just want to make sure, I don't have all of those written down, but I just want to make sure that those are incorporated into.
Was that feedback given to our attorneys so they could incorporate those changes into their version of the document?
No, I was waiting for any further ones from
Okay.
tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so you know, our 2020 budget was just approved yesterday, so we'll be getting that to you shortly.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see how tight our budget really is
Yeah.
and how important it is to fund us.
Yeah, no, I think out of all the various things that we talked about, I mean, the one that I think became more clear because we've got a copy of the Easthampton's own contract now, which I hadn't seen last time. That did talk about the funding for the PEG access, which allowed for the 95%, I think, to be paid forward. So holding back that 5% is in the Easthampton one, but it wasn't in the Southampton
Yep.
one. And that was,
Right.
that was Renee's big point, I think, last time.
I mean, my struggle with the last discussion is that they don't have the current version that we're working off of, and so I'd like this to go to town council for a revision, them to get
them a copy.
the copy of it so that we can be working off the
Yeah.
same document. And then I know that we do want to compare it to Easthampton, and I know that you probably don't want us to, but that's the document we all should be working off of, because you're working off of a generation that's one less than ours already. And for me, it got confusing on last
Right.
meeting. So I think, Ed, if we can incorporate some of the comments that Rini made at the last meeting and that others made during the last meeting, and get that done by town council so that we can be working off the same copy.
Sure.
That would be great.
Okay.
And one of the items that Maureen had asked for was kind of a list of what has been paid for out of that special PEG access account.
Okay.
That didn't get passed off to us, that the town managed. It would be useful for us to be able to see that as well, just so that we can do some planning for capital improvements.
Okay.
So we know what's being spent from that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be able to pull that from our accounting records, and I can provide it to you too. I knew you would email me about that, so that's not an issue.
Thank you.
Great.
So we're basically going to have to wait until town council gets back to us before we have any further discussion,
Yeah.
basically, with this.
If you want to
Yep.
work off that same one, yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so you'll let me know when I'll have to come back?
Hopefully, it'll be the next meeting, which will be the 21st. But
Okay.
if that changes at all, I'll let you know.
Okay, I'll plan to come the
Great.
21st then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Ratification of MOA with Highway Union Local 98. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? Making some progress.
And this was put together from what the negotiations and the select board had agreed to for the mediation session in executive session at the last meeting and in previous meetings.
Okay. So Ed, what do you need for? Do we need just an approve? We just need to approve this.
Correct. Once we approve it, it can go to the union for their approval and ratification, and once that is done, we can move it forward to actually incorporating those changes into the contract going forward, and we'll be able to use that for the highway superintendent finishing his budget estimate for fiscal year '21.
And this incorporates everything that we went through in executive session.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. This,
Do I have a motion to accept?
I move to accept the MOU between the town and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 98.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'll get you an original of that for our signature in between the open and executive sessions.
Okay. Great. That feels good.
Okay. Oh, boy. Okay.
All right. We're skipping over a couple of other MOAs.
You want to do maybe the
Right.
letter of support?
Yes.
Do a
Yes.
couple small things?
Yeah, we'll do that. So, okay, we'll skip down to letter of support for Hampshire Regional Planning Grant for full-time shared resource school officer. That is on 133. I know
Yeah,
we
they
got.
provided language for the letters.
Yeah, and I drafted it into a letter on the select board's letterhead.
Good.
Basically, just to fill everybody in, this is to apply for a grant. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but this would be to apply for a grant to secure funding for the school resource officer. Oh,
Yeah, it's a feasibility study.
Yes.
It's a okay.
Yeah.
So explain. What am I reading right here? Do you have more information on that, Tammy, or do you want me to just read what Principal Smitty wrote?
That's what it is,
Yeah.
Tamara Lunas, 298 College Highway. It was something that was brought up at our meeting. This is a grant that would be able to do a feasible study. It's not to actually pay
Okay, got
for
it.
that position.
Yep, I
See
see
how
that
we
now.
can,
Yep, I see
okay,
that now.
you
Yep.
see that? Okay.
Making the funding and
It says-
memorandum.
For
Yeah.
a regional model.
To create a regional model,
Okay.
yeah.
Great.
Would you like me to read her paragraph on this so the people at home
Yeah,
can
why
hear
don't
it?
we do that?
Okay. Additionally, I'm working on a grant with the Westhampton Police Chief Dave White, and we would benefit from Select Board support. There is funding available to review how a regional model could work for a full-time shared school resource officer position, which is tricky given the fact that we are a regional district. The grant would allow us to explore possible options with a consultant who is knowledgeable in sharing resources for efficiency across towns. I have not had an opportunity to discuss this with my principal colleagues, but plan to do so at our next leadership meeting. However, the grant deadline is quickly approaching. It would be wonderful if the town select board would consider writing a letter of support for us to obtain this grant. This grant is not to secure an SRO for the district at this time, but to review how the logistics of it would work to the benefit of the whole community. Part of that work is to ensure that town and school officials within the district can weigh in on if and how they would want an SRO to operate within their local schools and how the position could be funded in a fair and equitable way. And then it goes on to say, a sample letter suggested by the consultant is copied below. If you are comfortable endorsing this work, I would appreciate the select board chair could send this back to me in a PDF or by snail mail by January 15th.
Great.
And
What I'm just wondering, because she said it would be tricky because we're already a regional school, and they're looking to create shared resources among different schools. If each, would it make sense that each town would apply for this as independents to share
Yeah, that makes-
resource? Would that,
Yeah, each town would, and then that way there,
we're going to apply individually?
well, each of us are giving a letter to
Yes,
support
Right.
this being done
Right.
for our region,
right.
Yeah.
the regional, so that we can, the regional will have an SRO, but Westhampton Elementary will be able to have somebody come through. If they need to come down to Southampton, if they need to go up to the Williamsburg, Chesterfield, we'll have that ability to know how to use that resource officer to the best of our ability.
I'm just thinking for the grant-making process, if they were not going to, if they already looked at us and said, well, you're already regionalized, would we increase our chances if each town applied
That,
and then to come together to share? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I
Instead of
know.
taking- Instead of putting it together, let's take it apart and then put it together.
yeah.
Probably not in this case. There's more power by the region, much like we tried to do last year when we put in a DLTA application for a region, hoping that Easthampton and some other communities would go along with it to, whether you say recreate or reinstitute BayPAC. So in some cases, regionalization grants actually get higher marks than individual communities, especially when those individual communities may be of smaller sizes.
Okay. I'm just picking up on the word that she used, tricky,
Yeah,
and I'm just
Well,
saying,
it's-
is there any way around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as straightforward as, whether, Easthampton or Westfield or, some larger community that had their own school district and wasn't regionalized was
Right.
looking into this. So, yeah, there's some aspects of it that are trickier than,
And
but
no-
if we did it on our own, it probably wouldn't incorporate into an SRO for Hampshire Regional.
right.
Okay.
And knowing Kristen, she's looked into this
Yeah.
and is going to do the best of her ability to get
Yeah.
that through.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to support the signing of this letter? For
So
re-
move.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll have you sign that one in between the
Okay.
2 sessions, too.
All right, next is Franklin Regional Council of Governments, fire alarm sprinkler testing and smoke detector cleaning shared procurement agreement.
And this just came to me last week, but it's an opportunity to put in for a joint procurement for fire alarm, sprinkler system testing, and smoke detector cleaning, which we currently have to do. I would believe that it would be worth our while if we at least allowed them to bid it out with us being our participant to see how it comes out and see if we can save a few dollars.
Okay. So this doesn't bind us to anything, it just allows us to be a part of it to see
Yes.
how much it would cost?
Yeah.
Okay, because they gave some rough estimates within this, and it looks pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's very reasonable, yeah.
And would this include also Norris as well? Or,
I cannot bind the Norris School Committee.
okay.
Yeah.
It was
They're
addressed,
responsible for that
yeah,
that
it was addressed to
building, but-
school business managers as well, so I was just curious
Yeah.
about that, yeah.
Okay.
I guess I have the question, who's been doing it up to now?
Yeah.
We have a vendor that does it for
We
us.
do?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have
Okay.
something to compare
I
to.
thought it might be
Yes.
a combination of the fire
Okay.
department,
Yeah.
on and on. No.
No.
We hire outside, okay.
So this is just to participate in the bidding,
Correct.
or bidding process?
And then we'll have a number to compare to the other number we already have. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to accept fire sprinkler alarm testing and smoke detector cleaning shared procurement agreement?
I'll
Yeah.
move.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any other necessary business that cannot wait until the January 21st Select Board meeting? Going once, twice? Okay. Do we want to go back up to bylaws?
We can? There's a couple other things. You want to do the,
Or do you want to do PCFs and warrants?
Yeah,
and-
you want to just,
Okay.
clean it up.
Let's do that. So we'll go down to, we're skipping over the bylaws for right now. We'll get to it in a minute. Items for signature, personal change forms. One is been crossed off. It needs to go to the next meeting. Needs a little bit more review.
Okay.
So there aren't any, correct, Ed?
Correct.
There aren't
Right.
any. Okay. Licenses and permits. Common Vicular, new 2020. Michael Coffee Company, if I'm
Mikkel.
pronouncing the Mikkel Coffee
Mikkel,
Company, 141.
And everything is in order for their paperwork.
What's that? Everything's
Everything's in order for their paperwork, for their common vic.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept this license and permit for Mikkel Coffee Company?
yeah, so moved.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Francine, did you sign the warrants?
Yes, we have a vendor warrant in the amount of $159,956.93.
Great. We're skipping over the other documents requiring signature. That's not ready. Anybody have anything to address on any of the pending items? Or talk about on any of the pending items? Ed, any updates on any of those, or?
No.
Okay. Calendar and announcements. Select Board meetings are scheduled for January 21st, February 4th, the 11th, which also has a special town meeting, and the 18th. And I guess now we should go to bylaws. Back up to bylaws, right?
Unless you want to do, any open time? I don't know.
Unless I want to do what?
Open time for the public?
Oh, sure. Yeah, why not?
I mean, the bylaws will be a while, so.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, let's do that. I agree.
Maybe?
Open time for the public.
Tamara Lunas, 298 College Highway. I don't know if you guys have the answer for this. When we are doing licenses and permits for businesses and things, do we verify that they have their back taxes paid or their water bills paid and all
Yes.
we do?
That's part of it.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And in this particular case, because I know why you're asking the question, is this particular landlord has entered into a payment agreement with our collector treasurer, which puts them into compliance with our bylaw.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was for all things, not just this one. If anybody was, if that's looked at all for all kind of town things.
It is, yeah.
The list of anyone that has unpaid taxes. Our bylaw says that they have to be, they can't be 12 months past due. So I regularly send the names of anyone that's 12 months past due to department heads so we can deny permits, licenses. You know, we won't sign off on if they're doing any additions. They won't be able to get building permits. Yeah, so we do look at it, and yeah. And in this, you're welcome.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah, it can apply to building permits. It can apply to whether it's alcohol licenses or common victicular licenses that are before the select board. You know, if we, in the case of, you know, new car licenses or used car licenses that might come up, food permits through the Board of Health, and actually even would flow to someone putting in an application for, you know, some type of a permit through the planning board. Could even be through, you know, ZBA. So it is pretty broad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, at the last special town meeting in October, we also put forth that, the article on the restriction of licenses, or issuing of licenses. And I think did we cut our time down to 6 months? It was,
Yeah, but it hasn't gone through the
it's not gone through the AG, right, but that was the intent. We voted on it at town
Right.
meeting.
That will be soon.
Right. So it's actually a 6-month timeframe, not 12.
Usually they say up to 3 months, and that was October 22nd. So this, you know, later this month will be the 3 months. When we get it back from the AG's office, assuming that they do accept it, which I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, then we have a requirement that we have to publish that new bylaw amendment, which means that put it on the bulletin board, put it on our website, that becomes a publication, then it goes into effect.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, anybody? All right. So we're going to go back now to draft bylaws from Bylaw Review Committee.
Okay, all right. Just before we get started, I was just going to ask Virginia to provide just a little historical perspective on this, to kind of set the context of how we went from where we were and worked along all this time to get to where we are.
Perfect.
And it'll be brief, but I think it's important.
Virginia A. Hart, 27 Fulmer Road, member of the Bylaw Committee since its inception. And I say that because I'm the only one that has that entire history. And being a history teacher, that becomes fairly important. Let me go back. I was asked by the then administrator, Heather, if I would be willing to serve on a bylaw review committee. She outlined the responsibility of the review as to update and make it easier to use for people wanting to check bylaws. And these were some specific things that were explained. Check for relevancy. And I'm going to give you some examples as I go through here, what we had. Check for relevancy. Well, you can do, and she was saying, delete some of these. The relevancy one, We had a bylaw that said you couldn't coast on the streets of Southampton. We had no idea what that was, the members of the committee. I took it upon myself to ask the then police chief, Mike Goyette, and our current police chief, what they would do if they were supposed to enforce this. As they didn't know, and there were about 4 or 5 different possibilities of ideas, it got deleted. There were some that didn't need to be deleted, but parts deleted. Again, 2 of those were the bylaws that moved us from 3 elected select board members, and the second one from 3 appointed finance committee to 5 elected. Included in that was the process by which they would be elected to then enter the staggered terms. Well, that stayed in there. And that was probably the 1980s when we did that. Just a couple years ago, the Finance Committee read the entire bylaw and got concerned about their term. Do we have to change these and all that? No, that needed to be deleted. Rewrite them when it was not clear or it was confusing, removing wording that was not commonly used or containing legalese. Phrases like prima facie in the dog leash law, which we couldn't figure out anyway. That whole leash law thing was so confusing. We couldn't figure out whether it was dogs running at large or people with large dogs. Sometimes there were several bylaws that were interspersed that all really kind of should have been together at some place. And then again, the dogs. I think there were 4 bylaws scattered. And when that one that was presented was put together, Janine and I did that. We put them into one bylaw. But that bylaw didn't contain anything that hadn't been in those 4. We were asked to group the bylaws that address similar issues, like putting all of the town government ones together. That one thing, in the past, when a new bylaw was added, was simply stuck in at the end. There was no attempt to renumber, clear it up. Add to bylaws when they needed it. The original bylaw on town clerk was the town clerk shall issue permits. Well, they do a lot more than that. Issue permits. Obviously, something had happened, and they wanted a bylaw to stress that they were to issue permits. But no, everybody knows what the town clerk does. We don't need to put anything else in there. And note areas that were not covered. There were ones that weren't covered. And as you probably well know, this committee became a revolving door. And often it was for good reasons that people had to leave. Some people discovered it was taking more time and they had other town offices and they wanted to spend more time on those. Then we got to a point where we were moving along, new people came on, we were moving along very well with Velda's help. But Velda left town. And we kind of stagnated for a while. But we are going now, and I will say, I have never seen people put as much time and energy into the bylaws as Chris and Francine have. They have worked tirelessly to get this thing done. Okay, just a few things to remember. We have worked from existing bylaws. We're not sitting around thinking up new things. The only new one that I know of is the one that someone wrote, thinking of animals, and there was no one about humane treatment, but that can be we've tried to check with every appropriate commission, board, committee, or individual. Some of the bylaws are quite old, and the only way you can kind of guess where they were was to look at when they might have been done, was to look at the original placing, their original number, and gauge by something else. One key point I have used is that coasting was done in 1948, I think. Another one was that I know when I came to town in 1972, went down to get my dog license, the leash law was pointed out. So those are kind of key points that you can start with. My only other thing is I think we need to remember that a lot of those earlier ones never went to town council. In fact, it's been only recently that we've had a town council that a lot of things were sent to. And I have no idea when the Attorney General's office wanted copies. One last thought. You can always check with other towns to see what their bylaws are like. And I think we have, even before we began our work, we're in pretty good shape. I think we're in much better shape now. But if you're planning on visiting a town, maybe you want to check some of their bylaws. One nearby town has their noise bylaw. Don't yell obscenities from the sidewalks. Just in case you were planning on it. And another one is don't walk your neat cattle down Main Street. And that's N-E-E-T, not N-E-A-T. Are there any questions that you have for me?
I love it. Totally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Bless you.
Bless
So
you.
maybe, Francine, if I can just,
Yeah,
maybe
go ahead
mention
and talk
if you
about
mind.
this, yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, figure out how to proceed with this, but.
Go.
From the meeting on Thursday, I tried to update the overall chart that we have. We had agreed on, I think, 15, if I'm not mistaken, all the ones that I've highlighted in green on our chart, that we would come back and discuss a little bit more tonight, with the idea that they would then go on to our legal counsel for some review to get that process going, given our time frame before getting them ready for the warrant. And that with the hopes that when we have our full board present on January 21st, if we have to take any formal votes, we can do that at that point in time. So with these, I've gone through as requested last week, and in the comment column, you'll see whether we have already gotten review from somebody or if it's with a committee to be reviewed and we're waiting on comments. So I've tried to clarify that more clearly than perhaps it was last week when we met. So with that, I'm not sure how you would like to proceed, Matt.
Well, I mean, have we all reviewed? I mean, you both have, and I have.
I think we dreamed them in
so
our
the three
sleep,
of us I
right?
know have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, based on our last discussion at the, on Thursday's select board meeting, I mean, the ones in green, I think one of the main questions I had is who's reviewed these. And Rini certainly had some concerns relating to a lot of them needing to go not only to the initial board or the initial person or board or whoever it was that reviewed them, but also, you know, generally speaking, she wanted some of these to go to the Board of Health,
Right.
which I tend to agree with
Right.
as well. And so we're waiting for those checks on those. But the ones that are in green are still in green.
And those are the ones that we hope to present at the special town meeting in February.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we're not hoping to add any of these orange ones, are we?
No,
No.
no.
Those will be for later.
Just the
town
ones in green.
meeting. Okay.
So, yeah. And those would be just for the record? I mean, if you don't mind if I just read
Yes,
those?
sure.
So that would be the first one is a town meeting, and the town moderator, Robert Floyd, has provided input and review on that. The one on the select board itself, which we're involved in, obviously.
Here tonight.
The town administrator, Ed, has reviewed that. The town clerk, Lucy, has provided input and review on that. Treasurer collector, Jen, has also provided input and review. Let me just go through this and then we'll get back to it. And we may have some, that's why it's good if you guys are here. If we have some little tweaking to do, we can work on some of that. But general government, that's one where we've actually moved things around. That's one where I think we saw that there were lots of things in the wrong places, and we've kind of slimmed it down a little bit and moved things out that just didn't belong there. Restriction on issuances of local licenses and permits, that's the one where we noted last week that it had gone to the special town meeting, is still waiting AG approval, but there was a paragraph or two in there, a section in there that should not have been, that was overlooked. So we decided to try and maybe get it back on the town warrant, and if the AG approval does or does not come in before our special town meeting, then we can figure out how to handle that. But we would have to actually correct that and delete a paragraph or two out of that one. Overnight parking, both Randall and the chief have looked at that, and the chief and I have talked about that a little bit more today, and if we can maybe get to that one, because they've got a couple of definition questions that would be helpful to hear right from them while they're here. Fire lanes and fire hydrant use, Chief Workman has provided input on that. Council on Aging, the Council on Aging Board has had an informal review, and they're meeting formally on tomorrow, that will look at that again. Sidewalk clearing, Randall and I have met on that one and clarified that, hopefully, a little bit more. Fees to town treasury is one that we're recommending deletion. It's an old one that doesn't seem to have any relevance anymore. Community preservation has had some edits and review done by Virginia, and they'll be looking at that at tomorrow's CPC meeting. Elected and appointed committees, boards, commissions, conducting business. And the next one, let's see, appointed committees, boards, commissions, membership. Those are both new, right, Francine?
Yes, they are.
Those are new. So those are ones we probably need to look at a little bit more clearly. And then wetlands protection, Concom has provided input and review last night. So those are ones that we think are the most ready to move on to a special town warrant. And I think if, I don't know whether it's going to be painful to go through paragraph by paragraph. I don't know how you'd really want to do this. If those that are here that have got ones relevant to themselves have got specific comments, maybe we could start with them first.
Yeah, and we probably need to review 45 and 46.
Right, and
I think before we do that,
but we've got, for example, town.
So let's start. Let's just go down here. So we have Randall here, but if we're going down the list, the first person I see here is Robert Floyd. Do you have anything to say about town meeting?
Robert Floyd, Town Moderator. My purpose was to approve the transfer from wherever to where it is now without changing a word. So that's where I weighed in. I certainly would like to change some words, but I may do that down the road. But as far as what's here, I was at that meeting and I did approve that.
So everything, there's more than just there's more than just, or am I wrong?
Well, some of them were
I mean, there's definitely reordering here, but
there's definitely reordering. For instance,
but there's definitely added language.
We flipped it, and if there was any creation, it was after the meeting, and I haven't seen that.
No, there was nothing.
Okay.
No creation.
And so they took from general, that was the concept about bonding, paper ballot.
Right.
For a bond articles.
And we moved that over to here.
Yep.
And everything else you saw.
I think there was something else in general, maybe not. But to my knowledge, not a word was changed.
No.
No, I think other than for maybe some clarity's sake, that was it.
Well, clarity's sake makes me nervous.
No, but I mean,
Because that means a change.
I think there is wording change.
dropping off a word here or there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it.
I don't think the substance was changed. There may have been some wordsmithing, but I'll give you can certainly have this copy. But in essence, what we agreed to is what we did.
We're talking abstract words are changed. Certainly, one can change a word, and it would have a different influence on the intent. So that I wasn't aware that words were changed.
Well, and they like maybe minor tweaks. You could look at this. This is essentially essentially unchanged.
Okay.
Given that,
Can I just give you an example?
Sure.
If you don't mind. Old section 5 was, articles in the warrant shall be acted upon in the order of their arrangement unless the meeting by vote otherwise determines. And we tried to maybe make it more English, better English, but maybe this is where you wouldn't agree. Articles in the warrant shall be acted upon in the order of their arrangement unless the meeting by majority vote revises the order in which the articles will be considered. So, I mean, it's
Yes.
clarification language, but
yeah.
When I hear the specifics, I'm good.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, but
So he's got
maybe
to see that.
you want to have one more look at it.
Yeah.
I can certainly get that
Sure.
to you. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you want to have one, does it make sense for him to have one more look at it before we send it?
I mean, he's basically,
I think he can send it. If there's any tweaks,
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah. Another example of that is Section 3, the old Section 3 says, "A motion made in town meeting shall be reduced to writing when required by the moderator." The proposed change is, "A motion made in town meeting shall be put forward orally and in writing with copies provided to the town clerk and the town moderator."
I don't like that. I like the original. Case in point, the last meeting that we had, there was no reason to have that in writing. They were taking out paragraph 3.24, 3.25, and everybody understands that. That doesn't need to be in writing. We required it to be in writing, and nobody could find a pen or piece of paper, and it held up. So the moderator needs to decide what needs to be in writing or not.
But just to be clear, the old one says shall be reduced to writing. We changed
When
it to be.
required by the
When
moderator.
required. And we put shall be put forward orally and in writing.
Yeah, but you're requiring it.
So, yeah,
So to me, that changes the intent,
Yeah.
taking out when required.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
All right, well, maybe
all right,
Yeah.
get it back.
we can do another, it wouldn't take that long to get you a copy and look at it.
No, and I think we should do that, so,
I'll email you a copy
Okay,
tomorrow.
thank you. I'll
This
take care
section.
of it tomorrow. Get it back.
Good.
great.
All right,
Thanks, Robert. Select Board.
Yeah, so
That's us.
let's see. Okay. So Select Board, one of the things we did was try to simplify the language. The old stuff had talked about 5 members, and to change the existing 3-member board, the election shall take place as follows. The first year, the annual town election, 2 members will be elected to 3 years and 1 member for 2 years, thus adding 2 members to the present 3-member board.
Yeah.
Re-election to 3 years, but in it, you can see the
Yep.
Okay, so what we did is try to simplify that by saying the select board shall consist of 5 members, each elected to 3-year staggered terms during the town elections. Re-election will be for a 3-year term, will be for 3-year terms to the balance, or the balance of any term created by a vacancy resignation. So that just, we tried to
Clarifies
get
that.
through the mud that was there and put it in English that could be understood. So that's more than just a few words perhaps, but it's trying to clarify the wording, but also not change the intent. That's what we believe we should have done. So there's things like that we've done through here.
For instance, on the next one, where we talk about the direction and the management of town properties by the select board affecting the interest or the welfare of the town, that was kind of vague, so we tried to be very specific in saying the select board shall have the authority to direct and manage the property of the town so as to promote and maintain the general well-being of the town, except as otherwise provided by law or by these bylaws. No member of the select board may act on their own or engage in any business of the town without authorization from the full select board. I mean, so we're putting parameters around things where I think we think things were kind of open-ended. Everyone's going to have plenty of time to read this. Okay.
Does anybody have any comments on the select board that's in the audience?
Well, they wouldn't have
You?
seen it, so.
Lucy?
I just wanted to say, did John Martin...
Come on up.
Come forward.
Sorry. Lucy Dalton, 10 Strong Road. Did John Martin get to read any of these new proposed changes in the packet?
He's had them, but I'm sure he's been on vacation, so I wouldn't expect he's had.
Okay,
had
I
read
just
them.
was wondering, because if he's
We're
hasn't had a
not
chance
voting
to...
on them tonight, we're
Right,
discussing them
right, I
tonight.
know,
And
I
I hope
know.
this saves the time and not
Right.
having to discuss them next
Right.
week
Yeah.
again.
I just feel like, is he going to get a chance to...
Yeah.
He's
I mean,
got-
he's been getting all
copies
the,
of it.
Okay.
all the packages. We've gotten these 2 or 3
Yeah.
times now
Yeah,
with our
he's
council
gotten
meetings.
these.
But
And,
he'll be back on the 11th, and that'll give us 10 days before we next meet. So
Okay.
he'll have a chance
All right,
to
okay.
hopefully read them more fully. I'm sure nobody's reading them on vacation, or at least I hope they're not.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that...
Yeah.
No, we're not voting on them, just to be clear, we're not voting on them tonight, but we are voting to send them to town council for review. So that doesn't set them in stone by any means, but, you know, that's where they're
But we
headed.
have to stop making changes at some point. We will always, this will be a work in progress for forever, I guess. You could always improve it, but
Okay, so, I mean, we're okay with the select board?
I think,
well, we'll hear from other people, but
if anybody, I mean,
I am.
let's see what else here. Just another clarifying change, if I can, this is the one about the the select board is authorized to sell and otherwise dispose of equipment or material in the hands of any department. That was a little bit clear, but then what the old one had said is notices should be the selectmen shall determine if the equipment or material is of sufficient value to sell by competitive bid or auction. Notices shall be posted in 5 public places and at least once in a daily newspaper of general circulation, with the time and place of sale, descriptive listing of articles at least 2 weeks prior to the auction, basically. Selectmen may reject all bids which they deem inadequate or not in the best interest of the town. So a couple of these were cosmetic, where we're changing selectmen to select board, obviously, as been done. And this one, I think we just reworded, so it just saying that at least 2 weeks in advance of any competitive bid or auction, notices including a descriptive listing of the articles available and the time and place of such sale shall be posted in 6 public places and at least once in a daily newspaper of general circulation. The select board may reject all bids determined to be inadequate or not in the best interest of the town. Proceeds from the sale of any equipment or material are deposited into the general fund. So that was an additional sentence. That's a new sentence compared to what was in the old one. So it's that kind of thing we put forward. Okay.
And I'll just remind the select board that actually the bylaw change to select board the provision was in there as once approved by the Attorney General, anything still remaining in there that said selectmen or Board of Selectmen can be automatically changed without asking for it in another bylaw revision.
No, we didn't. I mean, we just took advantage where we were changing it just to change it, but we know that in every other instance, it's been changed.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So town administrators,
So we're okay to send, just Ed, for,
Yeah.
as we go down here, we're okay to send Select Board number 3 to town attorney right now. 'Cause
1 and 3?
No, not 1, because
we'll let Robert-
Robert's going to review that, and then once he does, then,
Well,
So 3.
Let me just hand Robert my section 1 right now, so that he can take a look
yeah, that's it.
and, there you go.
All right. So number 3 so far, Ed,
Okay.
and maybe 1 after Robert takes a look at it. Town administrator.
I'm good with it.
That's a pretty short one. That's pretty straightforward. Everybody good with town administrator?
There was nothing in the bylaws about the town administrator.
a new
There was
one.
no section.
Yep.
Yeah.
We added that.
Okay, so send number 4.
and it basically just refers to, doesn't go into any duties, it just refers to the contract,
Yep.
the 3-year contract.
Yep. Town clerk?
Okay.
Lucy?
Lucy. You have any
Anything you wanna
comments or
come up and,
changes or things that we have gone through?
Yes, I just, I know I talked to someone about this, but the first part, section 1, the proposed change is fine, but I'd rather we keep the section 1, where it says the town clerk shall immediately after every town meeting notify or cause to be notified any person elected, chosen, or appointed. And I know that it was put into a new article, either section 45 or 46, but I'd rather keep it there. The section 1, just,
And keep the proposed change as well.
yes.
So then we would renumber?
No, we wouldn't have to renumber it, we just have to add.
So,
It would seem, I would suggest we move the old 1 down into, combine it with the old, no, wait a minute. I mean, we should start out with the town clerk as an elected position with a 3-year term. That should be
Right,
the first
right,
paragraph.
Right, yeah.
So what you would like to save, we need to bump it down.
I would make it, combine it with number 2, section 2. Start the town clerk shall immediately after every meeting, and then also permanently maintain, well, no.
Well, no.
Yeah, you could,
No.
No.
All right, this is going to take a bigger look. I mean, we could leave it as
I
a
mean-
standalone. But for every change, you make this kind of cascades, because then it changes
I know,
subsequent things.
I just,
so what is, just
I mean,
to
we
help
could-
me with
we
this,
could add it
you're
into-
concerned that it's not in there, but you said it was picked up
It's
somewhere else?
elsewhere.
it's in 45,
It's in
or
45,
46, one of
which
them.
is under what?
They're new,
When we're talking about committees and boards, how they're notified,
right.
Oh,
the fact that they have to be sworn in, the fact that they have to agree to accept the position, all of the,
Can we just add it to section 3, because it has to do with elections? Section 3,
Okay.
the clerk conducts the annual town census, prepares a street list of residents. The town clerk shall immediately after every town meeting
Yeah.
notify or cause to be notified any person elected,
fine.
chosen, or appointed to any town office or to serve upon any board or committee. So if we just add that to section 3.
Okay, so the
That would work.
just to be clear, the non-bolded section 1
Right,
Yeah.
move
moves
that
down to the
section
bolded
3.
section 3.
Yes,
Okay.
That works, yep,
okay. And then we'll,
flows too, that's fine.
yeah, it does work.
okay.
And I understand fully where you're coming from, because if you just moved that to section 45, it would actually create the same issue that came up with the ballot questions for the debt questions at town meeting. It would be in an obscure place.
I just rather have it
Okay.
there. I took a look at it again. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
great, we'll do that.
Yep, anything else on that one? Lucy, is that okay? The rest,
Yeah,
the rest was okay?
that's fine. Everything else is fine.
Okay, so Ed will incorporate that change. And we're good
I'll
with,
make, it's easier if I make the
Oh,
change
yes,
and just email
absolutely.
it to you, because I'm trying to
Get the
maintain one version and not have
okay,
Yep.
okay,
5 versions
Yep.
out there.
okay. All right, so we're good with town clerk.
This is Article number
5.
5, town clerk.
Yep.
Number 6 is treasurer.
Number 6,
collector.
treasurer collector.
Jen.
So Jen.
Come with us.
Hi, Jennifer Day, Treasurer Collector. All right, so Section 1, it says the Treasurer Collector is an elected position with a 3-year term. She receives all money belonging to the town and expends and accounts for it according to the order of the town's authorized officers. It's really according to the order of Mass General Law. As an elected position, you don't do anything according to the town's authorized officers, so as long as it's elected, it shouldn't really say that,
Well, the
because it's
next
just not true.
The
you
next
know?
sentence talks about performs duties in accordance with the general laws of
Yeah, so it's
Massachusetts.
contradicting it too. I perform all my duties in accordance with the general laws of Massachusetts. I don't perform any duties in accordance with the town's officers. Not that I, wouldn't like to what anyone, what you
But you
Well, you
want
can't
to
do,
do, but
well, let me
it's
just, let's
just
just
not how
talk
it
this out a
works.
little bit. Like, you have to obey mass general law, but to some degree, some of what, I mean, some of what you look into can be brought to you by the town's officers, correct? And then
no, it's really, no, not really.
So what this says is you receive all money belonging to the
As
town
elected, I don't
and expend it and
answer
account
to the
for
town's
it.
officers, like.
And
No, I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I'm just saying it's not correct. Like, if you're elected, you don't, you know what I mean?
Well, I'll give you a quick example. And we talked about it earlier today, was the ability, the power, the decision to enter into a tax agreement payment plan. That solely sets with her as the elected treasurer collector.
Okay.
I can't do it. I can't tell her what to do on that particular case. The select board can't tell her what to do. It solely falls into her, and she's to follow the Mass General laws and the CMRs of the state.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any case where someone can tell me really what to do.
Then maybe we just,
You know what I mean, right? It's true.
we just put a period
And I'm not
after
saying I
it.
wouldn't take your advice and I wouldn't
No,
listen, and,
no.
and
Yeah.
I would work with you, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
just not correct.
not wedded
Right.
to it.
No?
Why
Yeah.
don't we put a period after it? So she receives all money belonging to the town and expends and accounts for it, period. The treasurer collector performs duties in accordance with the general
Yeah.
laws of Massachusetts as it relates to the management of all town finances.
That sounds good.
Simple wording.
Yeah,
That's an easy change.
that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
We're easy. We just want to get it done.
I guess I'm confused. I sent this out. I thought we had an exchange. You caught me in the hall.
I think I sent
You
it back
gave
to
me
you without
another
that in
a
it.
sentence, and I put it in, so,
Yeah,
all right, I
Right.
will
We'll make a change.
take care of
That's
that. But the rest of it is okay. You have it, right?
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And mind you, I mean, as this goes to KP Law, they may come back and say, hey, this doesn't belong, or something else is here, and,
Yeah.
so this is our best effort at
Right.
putting it forward, right? So, okay.
Okay.
Then general government, sorry, wrong one.
Yeah, general government.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, general government. It is general government, yep. Oh, boy.
This is where we tried to, again, start to categorize things where we thought they fit in best. So we shuffled some things from general government to select board, and
Yeah. So, this is one actually that Virginia will like. This is the one where the coasting is. In the existing general government for town, it says, no person shall coast or cross any public sidewalk or street of the town except at such time and in such places as may from time to time be designated by the select board. That's what's on our books right now, guys. That's what we've been trying to get through this nightmare of. So obviously, we're wanting to delete that.
Must be a precursor to skateboarding or something.
I don't know what coasting used to be exactly, but I don't know.
So then what we ended up doing after that was then reordering existing
Right.
existing sections so that, again, it followed, you know, some logical sequence.
Right.
So we're talking about, you know, the first thing is that the select board would hire an independent auditor, which was already section number 3 the last time in the original edition, in the original version. Then we talked about kept in, no officer or board of the town shall make any contract on behalf of the town, the execution of which shall be necessarily extend beyond 1 year. And then we're changing, every officer in charge of a department shall annually or on before April 30th transmit to the select board. We're talking about the annual report and submitting that. We changed it to every officer in charge of a department shall annually on or before. We put a specific date of April 30th, transmit to the select board a written report containing a description of activities and accomplishments. And we're using those words as opposed to what was in the original, which says a statement of the acts and the doings. You know, what does acts and doings mean? We're just updating, all we did was update the language of that and then specified, as it did in the original, that it needed to be submitted and printed in the annual report and distributed it 14 days prior to the annual town meeting. But again, the way we're presenting this to people, and I think our biggest challenge is how is it that we're going to, everyone who's going to read this can understand what we had to what we changed. So we're putting in the original language in one typeface, and then the proposed changes in another typeface that's very bold and should be very apparent to people what the changes are. I can't think of any other way of doing it other than sitting with different sets of documents and having people cross-check, and I don't think that's possible in a meeting. We'll be there, you know, several nights if we have to do it that way.
Hi.
Hey.
Lucy Dawn, 10 Strong Road. I just wanted to say for section 3, I thought this was discussed that it had to be 2 weeks before April 30th that the select board.
Well, it says honor before April 30th and then distributed at least 14 days prior to annual town meeting.
April 30th is a week before the annual town meeting, which is May 5th. That's 1 week.
Right, which means it actually needs to be
It has to be, I thought we had discussed that.
reviewed, edited,
Yeah,
and
I thought we
printed
had
before that.
discussed- Yeah.
So then it has to be April 1st or
But-
April 15th.
Well, I'll
Anytime before, it's got to be, you know,
I'll give you an
3
example.
weeks
We're-
before, because
we're
I
about to
thought we had discussed this.
We're about to send the
The date.
letters out, and I'm actually going to ask for them back February 28th. That gives people 6 weeks to do it.
All right, what date would you like that they will transmit to the select board a written report? If it's not April 30th, what is the date that we should put in there? All we need is a date. April 1st?
I think April 1st.
You know, on or before?
Do-
That's the latest,
I mean, it still doesn't give you a lot of time. It's got to be reviewed and edited, and then sent to a printer and printed.
March 15th.
I'd say March 1st.
I would too.
Okay,
I was just gonna
let's
say
go with
that.
March 1st.
It makes no difference, we'll
Yep.
just get a date in there.
Yeah,
That's
March
fine.
1st. Let's go with March 1st.
March 1st.
And then we still have got in there that would be to be printed in the annual report and distributed at least 14 days prior to the annual town meeting.
That's still the requirement, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're just changing the date on that one, Francie.
Okay.
Yep.
You're welcome.
And then one thing we added was that all public offices in town may remain closed on Saturdays as provided by Chapter 265 of the Acts of 1947, General Law 41. That was an addition that you had requested, I think, Lucy?
No, I did not. Janine Donovan.
Or somebody did?
Yeah, Janine Donovan.
Wasn't me.
Okay.
Okay, so that's part of the general government one.
Okay. I mean, that's been narrowed down significantly, pretty much.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So a lot of it's been moved.
Yeah. So what you've got is basically, under the proposed reordering, you've got unbolded, you've got section 1, section 2, then bold, section 3,
Yep.
unbold, section 4, and bold 5.
Yep.
So there's 5 sections to it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So we're good with general government.
Yep.
So
Okay.
is this easy for you to follow? I mean, because
Me?
you're looking
Oh,
at
it's
this
wi-
for the first time.
No, I mean, I read this last time, and then I read it between these two meetings.
No, what I'm
Think about
talking
it.
about, the format that we're using
Yeah.
and the way we're trying to
Yes.
indicate changes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Definitely.
Okay.
Okay, the next section. is
Overnight
on-
parking.
Just one before that, the restriction,
sorry.
sorry, not the restriction, the,
Restrictions on issuances of.
Right.
yeah, restriction on licenses and permits. This is the one that was at the special town meeting that has the erroneous paragraph in there, so we were just recommending to put it on the warrant with the idea that we would delete the one that refers to the preservation of historically significant buildings somehow snuck in there, which was paragraph E, and then the other part, which was section 2, which says the bylaw shall not apply to the following licenses: open burning, bicycle permits, sales of articles for charitable purpose, children work permits, fishing, hunting, trapping licenses, et cetera. We define licenses under Lucy's stuff in town clerk, and so this is, again, some arcane language. I don't know if we
Okay.
have child work permits anymore.
And so this would be, if we approve this, this would be
Would be
This would
in
be after the AG approves it.
There are? Okay.
Kids have to get assigned to go to work, they have to get assigned by school.
But they have, no, but, I mean, but is that something the town issues? No, I mean, this was a, school does, maybe, yeah, but not here. Yeah.
School to town?
We would have to ask for one if we
It's
hired
a,
a
it's a
student.
subdivision of the town,
Yeah.
much like Highway is, the subdivision of the town.
It's not gonna follow our bylaw, right?
So then, this is correct the way it is, because
So
the
you wanna
town
leave 2 in
doesn't
there?
issue it.
So it says the bylaw shall not apply to these following things, so we should leave that in there. We
Okay.
just get rid of the demolition one? What do you think, Art? Ed, do you?
I'm okay.
Leave section 2.
Yeah, eliminate that.
No, which one?
You would leave section 2, not eliminate it.
You want to leave it in or take it out? Let's be clear.
Well, I think the suggestion is to leave it in, because what you're proposing is to delete it. You're deleting section E, and you're
We're
deleting
deleting E.
section 2. So what they're saying is that it should be left in.
Because it's specified elsewhere. Most of these are under the town clerk,
Yeah,
Yeah, with the exception
with
of,
the exception of the work permits,
yeah, and trapping licenses.
which we
and-
can leave in there because we're talking about what the town
Yeah.
doesn't do.
Doesn't apply to. So let's,
So it's
let's,
okay.
let's leave section 2 in there.
Yes,
We'll delete only E is what we'd recommend then,
okay,
which is the historical buildings.
okay.
Okay, finally, to overnight parking. We have our 2 experts here. So, in talking with both Randall and the chief, if I can just take this one, Francine, Ian talked to me about the basically the traffic control regulations and policy that already exists in town, and without referring to that in any great detail, what we tried to do is just make a reference to it. So the policy actually begins, this is overnight parking, consistent with traffic control policy adopted by the Select Board on November 2, 2017, the following shall be in effect. And the way this now reads, and I'll go back to it a second, it shall be unlawful for any vehicle to be parked overnight at any time or during a daytime snowstorm on any street of the town from November 1 to April 1 of each year, including storms that occur outside of that specified time frame. Now, with that, the including storms that occur outside the specified time frame of November to April, that was something that Randall and I discussed because, as he pointed out, we had our first snowstorm in October this year. So we wanted to make that a little bit softer so that it's not just, You know, it allows for the occasional crazy snowstorm. Where we're a little bit stuck, as Ian and I talked about today, is how we define what the hours of overnight mean, as well as what a daytime snowstorm means. Given that a snowstorm might be done, you know, the last flake, as you said, might stop falling at 2 o'clock, does that mean that somebody can then go park their car on the street? So if you guys would like to address some of this and some ideas that you may have to better clarify this, that would be very helpful for us.
Ian Illingsworth.
Oh, God, we're going to get double teamed. Watch out. I see it coming.
No, first and foremost, I want to just, I appreciate what you folks are doing, because we often have to, some of these bylaws fall under our purview, and they needed updating, and our officers were confused by them. So I appreciate the fact that this is getting taken care of. So one of the things, reviewing this, you know, I have to kind of think like a defense attorney, because our officer is going to be issuing these tickets, and sometimes if a ticket's issued and it gets overturned and a car gets towed, that tow bill's coming to me.
Yeah.
So what is defined as overnight? You know, if we look at what I think is important, if whatever we do here, we make sure that these bylaws are consistent with our traffic control regulations that were adopted in 2017.
Right.
So that's one concern that I have, because if they're conflicting, that's going to create an argument for anybody that's appealing a ticket, naturally, and it should. As far as overnight, what is overnight in the regulations? It's defined as, I believe, midnight to 6 in the morning.
Okay.
Overnight could be, in some circumstances, considered dusk to dawn. So they should be consistent between the two, whatever the definition is. Another, in the proposed change, it was during a daytime snowstorm. The snowstorm, as far as I'm concerned, would end if at the last snowflake. So when somebody parks on the street and my officer, and suppose Randall calls and says this car needs to be removed, my officer's going to go there and say, he's not in violation of this bylaw. I don't have the authority to move that car.
Because it's still daytime, but it stops snowing.
It's daytime and it stops snowing.
It stops snowing.
So that's something that, you know, we should consider post-storm timeframes. What I suggested to Chris was perhaps give Randall, and in the bylaws, I mean in the traffic control regulations, it does, give him or somebody the authority to create a parking ban, as long as there's adequate public notice, whatever that may be, to issue that parking ban. So, you know, when you have a snowstorm that perhaps ends at, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning, it's anticipated to end at 6 o'clock in the morning, that could be, depending on the snowstorm, I mean, how long could that?
We could be cleaning up till noon or
till
later.
Noon.
Yeah.
So therefore, cars are allowed, based on this, cars could potentially be permitted to be on the street.
Right, yeah.
So I think that just.
So it's too big a loophole.
So the parking ban takes care of snowstorms during the day and at night, just covers it.
Yes.
The ban.
We haven't had that much trouble
And
with
it gives you the flexibility of changing the hours per occurrence based on how you need it.
Well, I think we could go back just on the, can be parked overnight, and we could put in parentheses, from midnight to 6 a.m., if that's what's consistent in the current.
That's what's consistent.
Regulations. We could just put
I
that.
have the regulations here with me, I'll just verify that.
Yeah, we could just put that in parentheses, so that part is clear.
It does say 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., but it also says the dates, just so there's clarification on this, through the control regulations, the traffic control regulations, the time from the dates are November 1st to March 31st. It's one day off, I'm just saying. So again, that could be, you could have a snowstorm, and like I said, if somebody appeals the ticket, I'm going to pay for that tow.
Okay, we'll put March 31st, but then we're going to leave in the language that Randall suggested, including storms that occur outside of that specified time frame, right?
And I think if you allow me or someone else to create a parking ban,
okay,
I think that's
that should cover us on times outside of this
Right.
regulation, right?
I mean,
Is that what you're
Yes,
thinking too?
exactly.
I think I would suggest we take out the word daytime, you know, a daytime snowstorm. I mean, who
During
cares?
a
I mean, a
snowstorm.
snowstorm, period. And then make another
sense,
sentence that says the highway superintendent has the authority to issue a
Parking ban.
parking ban or something like that. Would that
Sure.
Yes.
help us?
Seems simple.
Any comments? Anybody?
No, I mean, that's certainly what I mean, I've experienced parking bans. I feel like that they work for other towns and other cities and other
Yes.
municipalities.
You know, I think we have to think
alternate
about
side
what,
parking,
you
like,
know,
not that we have that,
a
but
proper notice would be, whether
Sure.
it's through code red, whether it's through the town's website, television, whatever it may be. I think it's important that the public gets that
Yeah.
proper notice.
Oftentimes, it's
Yeah.
the runner on the bottom of the TV news, yeah.
Yep.
Other towns do it
Yeah.
anyway that way.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, it's great.
That takes care of that. How about while you're both standing there?
And then
Yep.
the proposed addition, I would suggest it probably, instead of the chief of police for snowstorms, the parking ban for snowstorms, I think it probably, Randall would know best. That's just,
Yeah.
it would make the line of communication more
That he would
efficient.
be the authority to issue the parking ban?
Sure.
So it will be the highway superintendent,
No, the chief.
Okay,
or his or the authorized.
Or his designee. I
Yeah.
Right.
That's always great language.
And it's all fine, the rest
For some
of it?
reason- What?
The rest of it is all fine?
Looks good to me.
well, let's look at this was the addition, right? There wasn't much of anything that's all the old one said was it shall be unlawful to park overnight or during a daytime snowstorm between November and April. That's all the old one ever said. So we're trying to get a little bit more information. So what we've proposed, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read it. The second part was the chief of police and/or his/her designee is hereby authorized to prohibit parking temporarily where it is otherwise allowed, or allow parking temporarily where it is otherwise prohibited on any street or highway or part thereof, or parking lots maintained by the town of Southampton in an impending or existing emergency, or for a lawful assembly or demonstration or procession. Vehicles parked in places where parking is prohibited may be towed under the direction of an officer. However, such officer shall make reasonable efforts to notify the owner of such vehicle to have such vehicle moved prior to the vehicle being towed.
Sounds good to me.
Does that sound too gobbledygook, you in the audience? I mean, I don't know. You're our ears out here for now to see if that makes any sense. So
I think it sounds
that's
good.
basically where we are. And then we will have some sort of a fee penalty type schedule, and we're just saying there that anybody who violates this could be subject to a fine based on rates set by the town.
And according to the regulations, it's a $50 fine.
$50.
Yes.
Okay. Good, so if that helps to get that one nailed down a little bit,
Nice.
good, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate that.
And while I'm up here, there were two about the transfer station.
Yeah,
I did talk to the health director.
yep,
I wanted to make sure that there was no reason, I didn't see any reason to keep those because we no longer have a landfill.
yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure that there was no reason to keep them. And she couldn't think of any either, so as far as we're concerned, they can be struck.
We could actually
Which ones are they?
delete them? Well,
There were two
on-
Yep.
ones that landfill was in the title.
it's number 26 and 27 on your list.
Right.
Solid waste transfer, well, said solid waste landfill, and then commercial ID stickers landfill. And since the landfill doesn't exist, we were just going to change it to transfer station, but if you think that, I mean, there's very little in terms of the
Neither one of us
content
can think of any reason to retain it, so yeah, I assume
could-
all of these are going to Copeland and Page unless they can
Yep.
find some compelling reason to keep it.
So
They
proposal
can
would be
struck.
to strike 26 and 27, delete those. Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Randall, for getting back. Now we're on,
Actually, while Randall is still here, do we have that one? Where's that one?
What do you want?
Can we do sidewalk clearing while
Yes.
Randall is still here? So we don't have to hold you up all night long? Sidewalk clearing is number 19. And again, this one just said, property owners whose property abuts sidewalks in Southampton shall be required to clear such sidewalks of ice and snow during the winter months hereafter. Such clearing of ice and snow to complete within 24 hours after a storm. Each day shall be a separate violation resulting in a fee of $10 a day. So we changed these accordingly, some change there, plus an additional paragraph. So what we are proposing instead is property owners whose property abuts sidewalks in Southampton shall be required to clear such sidewalks of ice and snow during the winter months. Such cleaning of ice and snow must be completed within 48 hours after the storm ends, rather than 24 hours, which is what it said. So, and here we specified after the storm ends, rather than, we're trying to put some limitation on it. If said property is not cleared, fines will be assessed according to the rates set by the select board or town meeting. Proposed addition
No, and then just add to that, yeah, we're, instead of the $10 per day,
Yeah, there would be a
we're
separate.
going to list that penalty in our fee schedule
Yeah,
that
we've
will
got
be
to
attached.
just establish, we've got to review the penalties and fees in general. So we hadn't specified. We're trying to take out where we can specific dollar amounts in the bylaw itself.
So you don't
and
have to
a
go back to
separate-
town meeting, you set the fee schedule, and if something
Right.
doesn't seem punitive
And
enough.
just have kind of a
yeah.
standalone document that's the fee and penalty schedules for a
Understood,
lot of
yep.
things.
I think that's the
So-
norm.
And then proposed addition. So this would be what we're suggesting, Section 2. Senior citizens with age-related limitations and individuals with documented disabilities who are physically unable to clear their walkways have flexibility in complying with Section 1, which is what I just read, but must make alternate arrangements with caregivers, family, or neighbors to clear the walkways. When removing snow and ice, consideration must be given to not worsening the problem for adjacent property owners. So in other words, don't clear your property and throw it on your neighbor's property, for one. But there was also, trying to make some thoughts about how we can deal with folks that maybe have difficulty clearing their property. Certainly, we can't just, make it a dial-in to the highway superintendent or the police or somebody to come shovel everybody's sidewalk. That just isn't real. So what we were trying to do was to make some flexibility there, but say it's really everybody's responsibility to try and find somebody to help them clear their sidewalk if that's what they have in front of their house. But we're willing to hear some thoughts. So Randall first, and then maybe Lou.
So, I mean, I don't have a problem with this. It's whatever you guys think is reasonable. The proposed addition, I think you'd have to nail it down to some time frame, in my opinion.
Okay.
'Cause I think people might interpret flexibility to mean they just don't have to do it.
Okay.
So
might have
that would be my
an
comment.
extra day or something like that?
I'm, whatever you think is reasonable.
Okay,
Yeah,
good point. Okay,
May I speak?
I don't have to.
sure, yeah, please, go ahead.
Just relative to that, I just want to express that we're the law enforcement agency that has to issue those citations.
Yeah.
And people, it can be sometimes contentious.
Yeah.
Because some people don't believe that they should have to.
Sure.
But you also have a lot of people, in particular on Palmer Meadow Road, you have a lot of pedestrians if you drive down that road any given day. There's a lot of pedestrians, and I think, like Randall said, there should be at least a time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's not, I don't want this police department to be the bad guy on either saying they don't have to or giving the citation. Follow what I'm saying?
Really have that section at all, is my personal opinion.
Well, I think we do, because I think it's an issue.
I don't.
What are you going to add for time? Another day? And I guess what is it? I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I mean, what is another? I mean,
Well, it might give people more time to make arrangements.
Okay.
But I mean, I think what we wanted to avoid was having it be like, well, let's call the police or let's call the highway department.
but I guess an argument to be made here is 48 hours is 2 full days.
Yeah.
Of people on safe walks to school having to either walk around that or walk into the road on snow and ice.
Can I throw in a quick
Yep.
one too? Often the longer you wait,
Yeah.
Okay.
the
The worse
snow
it
frees
gets.
up and
Yeah,
you can't
the worse
do
it
at that
gets.
point.
I'm of the same. Like I have a portion of my driveway that I can't even
I'm
get
not
done.
sure.
Okay,
this
so maybe the flexibility, is we take out some of that wording regarding flexibility, because that may make it look like you don't have to do anything.
I mean, we live. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not trying to be mean or not considerate, and I'm really not. But I mean, we live in the Northeast. We live where we live. We know that we have snowstorms. So this, to me, this added. I mean, I'd like to think that if I needed help doing this, I would have the arrangements would have been made well before a storm because
It depends.
because
I
we
mean,
know that a storm is going to
I know,
happen.
but I think we have to be considerate of the senior population and what limitations some of them may have. Suggestion before, Tammy, you say something, would be just to take out unable to clear walkways but must make alternate arrangements.
Yeah.
And just take out that have flexibility in
Yep.
complying. Maybe take out that phrase, but that would be one idea.
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. My concern with the 48 hours is that you do have a ton of kids now that are walking to school, safe routes to school. They're walking over ice, and then those owners are going to come back and say, They walked all over, they packed it down,
Yeah.
and now I can't move it.
So what's 24 hours?
to get back to the 24?
12 hours? I mean,
I just
I
know
think most
Pomeroy
towns is
Meadow,
24.
and that way, we're trying to encourage kids to walk, but yet,
okay,
Okay.
I hear.
We'll leave it at 24? That's the way it was 24
Ed
hours.
has something here.
Ed.
Ed?
I'm going to read you one that I'm very familiar with because I was part of the
Okay.
writing it. The owner of any property abutting upon any street, lane, court, or square within the town where there is a sidewalk which is or may hereafter be established or set apart by the town as such shall, after the ceasing or fall of any snow thereon, within 24 hours, cause the same to be removed therefrom. And I'll tell you, it was one of the hottest topics. It's a bigger town, no doubt, but the biggest thing was parents and people complaining because that particular town still has a lot of local neighborhood schools that children walk to.
Yeah.
And, okay, they might have had that day off from school because of the snowfall, but the next day they have to go.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
24 hours seems
And-
reasonable then?
We see that on,
But I hope
see
you
it
also
on
notice it's
Facebook.
plain and simple.
People complaining because somebody drove over with
Yeah.
their not rototiller,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, snow blower, or they walked on it and they packed it down, and now I can't.
And that's what happens, I know.
Yeah,
So
so-
24 is fine.
Okay.
We can leave it at 24. We were trying to be
And
generous, but
we'll take out we'll make the time requirement on the second one. We're just saying, reminding people that if they're unable to do it themselves, that they need to make arrangements within 24 hours to have it taken care of.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
just leave out that, yeah. We'll just put the time frame in up above there too. Yeah.
All right,
Okay, good, thanks, guys. That's really helpful. Just thank you.
that's helpful.
I mean,
Good. So that takes care of that. Now we need to go back to the,
I don't think we have.
we hopped over the fire lanes and fire hydrants because we wanted to get to
Right.
the ones for Randall. And so
So why
looking
don't
at Article 17, fire lanes and fire hydrants, this was, I sent it to the fire chief. He agreed and approved of the language. And so we're leaving it essentially, the first two articles the same, about leaving unattended vehicles within fire lanes or anything that would obstruct access to fire apparatus. But we are changing Section 3. It says, any person who violates this bylaw shall be liable for a penalty of $50 for each violation. We're saying any person who violates this law shall be subject to a fine for each violation according to the rates, because we're referring back to that rate schedule so that we're consistent. And then we're proposed in addition, it shall be unlawful for any person or persons to willfully open or tamper with any fire hydrant or to cause damage and/or to allow water to flow on any public or private property in the town of Southampton unless previously authorized to do so by the fire chief or the water department. Unauthorized opening, tampering of a fire hydrant shall constitute a separate offense penalty, and we put the money in here. Penalty shall not exceed $200 per offense.
And just to say, what we've done here is the fire hydrants, tampering with fire hydrants, I believe was its own bylaw. And so we've actually combined it to make fire hydrants and fire lanes and fire hydrants as one bylaw rather than two separate bylaws.
We shouldn't.
Comment?
My only thing before Chief goes is I think the word should be, it's simple, but I think the word should be and between water department and fire chief, not or, which implies one or the other. I think they both need to authorize the use of it at the same time, right?
Well, if you say and, it's got to be both.
Yeah.
Well, I want it to be both. I don't want, like, what if the water department says yes and the fire chief hasn't even been told about it and somebody's running water out of a fire hydrant and the fire chief needs to have access to the fire department, fire, I don't
And works.
You could make it and simple.
If you do that when a fire, sorry. When a fire hydrant is out of service for any reason, the water superintendent has to notify police dispatch, who then will notify the fire chief.
Yeah.
So if that helps at all.
Well, I just don't want one department authorizing it and the other one not somehow knowing about it. The way that the or is it's, you can go to one or the other. You don't have to go to both.
So you have to have authorization from the water department
That's what
and the fire
yeah.
chief. is what you're
Yeah, they
recommending.
both need to be aware that you're doing something
Okay.
with the fire hydrant.
Okay.
And you have, obviously.
I didn't get an opportunity you didn't show me this one, so one of the things I'm just seeking consistency with the regulations. I noted in that, when I briefly saw it, was that there's nothing about parking in front of hydrants. It's about tampering hydrants, but not parking in front of them.
True.
Right.
Well, that's section 1.
And snow removal as well, that's a good point. You know, the snow removal around people.
Around hydrants.
Hydrants, that's another.
So that goes back.
And they have the town, for me, it being the enforcement officials for these bylaws and the regulations, I don't want to see a loophole, because if we have to tow a car and let's say there's damages to the car from it being towed, ultimately, that could become a liability on us. So I want to make sure that it's.
Are those 2 points in the regulation, the traffic?
In the regulations, we have something specific to hydrants.
Okay.
As well as fire lanes, yes. The language might be a little bit different relative to the definition of a fire lane, but.
Yeah, but wait, what are you saying? Because section 1 and 2 of this addresses parking in front of a fire hydrant and parking in a fire lane.
It says means access for a fire apparatus instead of.
Yeah.
So we could say fire hydrant instead of fire apparatus.
Fire
It's a little
Fire
clearer.
1, I mean, section
I
1 is
don't have
talking
it.
about fire lanes
I think they're referring to the fire apparatus as having.
Furnishing means,
access to the building
to the building, right?
versus the actual fire hydrant.
Hydrant.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret
Yeah,
it.
so you're suggesting a separate thing about parking in front of hydrants as
at
well
a certain
as-
distance. So, for instance, in the regulations, I believe in the regulations, it's 10 feet from a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's one about snow removal for her there too, or no?
There's not, because this is relative to traffic control, not.
But aren't
snow.
people supposed to clear fire hydrants?
People are supposed to
But-
clear out if they've got a hydrant near
It
them.
has to be,
It
has to be a regulation.
It's good practice. I mean, if I lived near a fire hydrant, I'd clear it out just in case my house is on fire.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's ever been a requirement.
It's not a requirement, by law. You have to actually have a bylaw or city ordinance for it.
Okay.
So then we need to,
What does anybody think we should add
we
that in?
need to put that in somewhere. Okay.
Clearing of fire hydrants, yeah, I think we should do that.
All right. Okay.
It is common sense, but
I know.
but let's not do common sense. Like, you gotta clear your sidewalk and you gotta clear your fire hydrant.
You'll be rewriting these. Okay, good, no, thank you. We'll do a little
Okay.
revision there somehow, Francine and I can
Okay.
take a look at language from, I've got the copy of the traffic regulations, and we can take the
Add the
language
fire
on
hydrant. Okay.
the fire hydrant.
And then how are you gonna address the
Sounds
snow
like a
removal?
new article.
Well,
How are you gonna address the snow removal?
we might even add that on, I was just wondering if we could put that on the side, well,
I don't
on the sidewalk.
Well, this article is specifically fire lanes and fire hydrants, so I think you
No,
put it
that's
into
what it
fire.
says
in that
I
one.
think you put it into fire hydrants. No, what do you mean?
Well, when we're talking about snow removal, we're talking about parking in front of.
Yes, but it's
hydrants.
specific to the fire hydrant, which is in the section.
Snow removal, of fire- so we could add the snow removal on the fire hydrant one in the fire hydrants ones, I think.
I was just going to suggest,
I think we could do that.
See,
Yeah, just keep it in the fire hydrant.
they've got.
Okay, alrighty.
Yes.
Okay. The next section was on the Council on Aging, which they've had a chance to look at, but the full board will look at it. That is their meeting tomorrow, but the most significant change here is that the Council on Aging Director used to report to the board of the Council of Aging. That's been changed. The Council on Aging, instead of being a governing board, is an advisory board. And so the director of the Council on Aging reports to the town administrator, and the Council of Aging Board is functions in an advisory capacity. And that's the most significant change here. And I think that's pretty consistent with how the Councils of Agings in other towns are structured and function. I think they made this change themselves. Now, we have to have our bylaws conform to their change in operation. So that's essentially what this is about.
So section 4 and 5 stayed the same though, Francine?
Right. And then we added a section 6, that it shall be the duty of the Council of Aging to carry out programs designed to meet the needs of aging residents 60-plus years of age, in coordination with the programs of the Department of Elder Affairs pursuant to Chapter 40 of the MGL. So we just cited their authority.
So basically.
Ed has something.
I'm just going to bring this up for discussion, and that is, I'm just going to call your attention to the current practice of that advisory board is to have, I believe it's up to two alternate members or associate members or whatever the term is. That probably should really be accounted for here. Otherwise, I would look at this, and I know it's what it existingly says, and says, you know what? Alternates or associate members aren't allowed.
Okay.
So in addition to the 7 board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, I can't remember exactly what the term is, but and the number, but I believe it's 2.
But they do function that way.
Yeah, but they do function that
They
way,
do.
so.
They have alternates.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it may, this would be the proper time to,
Put it in here.
yeah.
All right, you're right.
Okay, thanks. Good point.
You need 90 sets of eyes here to get this done.
I need to break in here. I'm sorry. Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. My dad talked about going down Maple Street on a toboggan, crossing the highway, and
That
going
was
across
coasting.
East Street. That was 90 years ago, and that was coasting.
There you go. Thank you.
Tobogganing across the road,
Across the highway.
across the highway.
Yeah.
Over College Highway.
Which is probably a dirt road at that point in time.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
And if it makes you feel any better, when I was looking up the other ones, there is still an article in the West Springfield ordinances referring to coasting.
Yeah.
So coasting means.
Now we finally have the
I didn't
definition,
look that far, but
That's
we
great.
think.
Yeah, that makes sense, though.
yeah.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
okay.
That's great. Okay. All righty. The next one is,
Community preservation.
yeah? You want to just summarize?
Since coasting and sliding.
Community preservation, right?
Number 33, community
Number
preservation.
33, community preservation. What we did, again, coming back to having consistency of format, when we talked about each department or board or committee, we defined it in terms of the numbers of members, whether they're elected or they're appointed, and then we highlighted or outlined who they are, what their responsibilities are, their terms of office, and so forth. So that's in essence one of the changes to the community bylaw. And then Virginia, who chairs the Community Preservation Committee, revised the remainder of the document, basically bringing the language up to date, defining, so in terms that today people can understand what it is that we're talking about. So we made some changes, she made some changes. It's going before your full committee tomorrow, Thursday. Yes. Yeah, come on up, please.
Virginia Ahart, 27 Fulmer Road, also chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I had gotten kind of lax. I read the whole thing very carefully when we joined and when this was the one that went in, but I didn't have any experience with it. Over time, I began to realize there were some real problems here. Well, first of all, I did check with Randall because there's that one on the Park Commission. And then his position, the road superintendent, which is also the ones that take care of the parks, were told that their representative, according to our bylaws, would be
The highway.
the road superintendent, DPW, whatever you want to call it. And I wanted to, or his designee. So I wanted to know if he still thought that was, he wanted to do that, or could it go back to the park commission? And he felt it was good. He didn't mind doing it, and that we would leave that in. I'd like to get rid of the or designee, but it doesn't really work well. Randall's always come, or not come, but not sent just anyone he grabbed off the street.
We did take out the or designee.
did.
Oh, you
It's
did?
out.
We did.
Okay.
That's gone.
Yeah, because in the past, I would arrive at a meeting and find somebody, I didn't even know who they were, and they were being sent by the head of the DPW. I'm not going to go into that, but Randall either came or he didn't. So that was all right. But I found one inconsistency that had to be changed. And that was that you name these people from these different committees, and they have, most of them except planning board, I think, are 3 years. And then the bylaw says they'll serve for 3 years. But then there's another little thing that was in it. And that was they couldn't be removed without a hearing. But wait, they've only got 2 years, say on a term on the finance committee, but they've got a 3-year term now for community preservation, or we have to hold a hearing to get rid of it. No designation as who the hearing was. So I found a lot of little things like that. There were some things that were just way too wordy. It's up to the committee to look at the town and see what the needs are, but that paragraph went on and on and on. So that's what I mainly did, and we will go over it tomorrow. Might be good for all the people that are on the committee anyway, because some of them are new, because this is also a shifting community or committee. It moves because each election year you get new people, perhaps, and new delegates from a committee. So anyway, a lot of stuff was taken out, but this comes from my few years of experience.
Yeah, no, I think you've simplified it and put the essentials in there that people need to know, which is
yeah,
it's very workable, I think. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, like Chris says, much more comprehensive, and that's essentially what we wanted this whole document to be. We wanted to be able, everybody could pick it up and read it and understand what it's saying, not try to guess what it's saying.
Well, the one that was originally done and was approved by all sorts of people before we could even get started, had a lot of stuff in it that might have been good then, except for the real error that people can't serve the terms necessarily.
Okay.
But we'll go over it tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I don't expect many changes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now the next 2 articles are new additions.
Next 3.
3, yes, 3, I'm sorry. Should we?
45, 46, and 50.
Right. Should we read them in their entirety for everyone here, or are we just going to consider it here, even though we're not voting on it? It's up to you. I'll tell you the attempt we tried to make. We tried to make certain that there were certain parameters around how business was conducted at meetings, okay? In terms of when appointments occur, how people are, sworn in, electing officers and getting a structure, setting up a communication system among and between the committee members and the town, making it official record so that people in the town know who's on what. And that has to be on the website. That we're responsible for following open meeting law rules, that everyone receives ethics training online and have proof of that on record in the town clerk's office. What is a quorum? What is a leave of absence for people who can't participate, and how long can that go on? Leaving a committee without its full complement and therefore unable to do some of the work that needs to be done.
And we've said there, just for what it is, may take a leave of absence from a group no longer than 2 months.
2 months.
Provided that membership would remain at greater than 50% of the maximum
Right,
membership, so the
right.
business can keep on working.
So there's, obviously, some committees and commissions and boards have their own bylaws that aren't included as part of the town bylaws. But nonetheless, those bylaws need to be approved by the select board, even though they're not part of the general operation of towns. Declaring and disclosing any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest if you're on a committee or a board. We're just looking and saying how, in the interest of transparency and making sure that everybody is aware, we tried to put some parameters around the service of people, their terms of office, and that was basically the intent of that. There are 15 sections here. Whether or not we want to go through all of them now, you'll certainly have a chance. It'll be published. You'll have it certainly in time for the meeting.
Might bring out just to talk about, because it's something we've added. Well, the whole thing is new, because there wasn't any real structure for anybody to work from. So this is a brand-new bylaw. But we put in here on Section 10, responsibility of the chair or his or her designee to respond to resident inquiries by mail, email, or phone within 10 business days of receipt of a question or whatever. So I think there's lots of times there's questions that are out there, and people at least have talked to me saying, gee, whatever happened to that? We never heard anything about it, kind of thing. So we're trying to put some parameters here, but we don't want to dictate things, but we need to have some level of structure. So I don't know whether that's realistic or not. So that's probably a point that ought to be discussed, whether that's real. That gives us 2 weeks when we say 10 business days.
And I'm going to say,
So I don't know, Matt?
I have a comment on that. I think part of the reason why people don't respond to these, and so we have to figure this out, right? Because I feel like one of the reasons why people don't respond to these is because they don't want to speak for the board or committee that they're on. Mm-hmm. And by chair, they're not authorized to speak on behalf of the board or the committee. And oftentimes, these things are requiring some type of a solution or an action. Mm-hmm. If your response is simply like, "Thank you for your comment," we'll add it to the next agenda. Yeah. That almost incites some of these things that are coming across our desks are rather aggressive in nature, and so writing something like that almost incites. Mm-hmm. Incites more of the anger. I feel like it's passive aggressive, like to respond. Oh, thank you for your comment. We'll add it to the next agenda meeting, or whatever it might be. But like a chair can't respond for the board.
Right. No, I understand.
That worries me a little bit because it's
other than to acknowledge what you're saying, and that's very. That could be very off-putting to people if they're incensed about something and they feel like they're being
very valid.
Passive-aggressive comment.
Delayed when the reality is no one individual can make the decisions for the board.
Right.
And I was also, Lucy Dawn, 10 Strong Road, I was just also going to, comment if the chairperson is on vacation and can't respond within 10 business days.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Even if, they can't respond for their board, but they can't even respond because they're not around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
maybe we could say that, after a meeting or something of.
After the next scheduled meeting of that committee or board.
Within 2 scheduled meetings or something.
Okay.
I mean, so that
I
maybe
like
might
what-
answer your question.
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. I like what you said. You're acknowledging that you actually received it and that you're going to be able to talk with everybody about it. I think letting people know that it's not just sitting out
Black
there in
hole.
the inbox being
They're being
ignored.
ignored.
Yeah, so, I mean, but that part needs to be somehow stipulated in here, that it's
Yeah.
not, that there's no decisions being made, but
Yeah,
this,
because when I
we
send you
acknowledge
guys
receipt.
something,
Yeah.
I have individual, but I also have the select board at the town of Southampton email that I'm hoping gets to all of you.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So we would acknowledge receipt
as long
within.
as you acknowledge that you've received it, then that way there, the people know that they really read it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and that, then ultimately, we would be getting back to them after the next official meeting of the committee.
Okay.
I think it should just be, say, acknowledge receipt within 10 business days.
All right. And not open the other.
But not like
take
res-
up the chair. How would you want to word it, though, Matt?
Well, I don't know how I would want to word it, but I want to be I want it to be careful that it's not, that the chair is not responding,
Right.
it is not like in detail responding to this.
Or
because-
his or her designee, in the event that you're away, the vice chair,
Right,
because
but-
we.
Yes, but the
which
specific
takes us
thing
to
is
the
very
next.
simple. It's a courteous statement saying, thank you for your concern or
Yeah.
request or your information. We will take it up at the next
Next
board
meeting.
meeting. It
Right.
has to be
Yes.
like that. And I don't want to dictate what the language is, but like, that's what I'm thinking,
that's-
not like an official response.
Right.
Right, but that's.
Or an
that-
opinion,
But that's
for
an
that matter.
acknowledgement, and
Okay.
that's fine. We'll do something like that.
Okay.
All right.
We'll
Okay.
tinker with that.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
And then we also stipulate, in case anyone ever guesses, that all members of elected or appointed boards, commissions, committees, councils, or groups all serve without compensation, just so it's clear to everybody.
So it's clear.
This is
That's
all
nice, yeah.
volunteer. So that's a new section. I'm sure we're going to get lots more feedback on that one from a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and rightfully so. We need to write it till we get it right,
Yeah.
if you're comfortable, but in essence. Okay, and Chris, you want to do the next one on participation?
Sure. The next one is membership participation on boards, committees, commissions, and councils. And this is, again, a new one. Section 1, all groups must have the maximum number of members and alternates, if appropriate, specified at the time the group is created, and this maximum number shall be an odd number. Section 2, should an existing group, which was originally set up with an even number of members, consistently not be able to conduct necessary business due to tie votes, the group may petition the select board, or the select board may so decide to increase the official membership of the group by 1. In this case, the vote by the select board would supersede any previous stipulation of the official number of members of the group.
Wait a second.
Section 3,
Well, wait,
Yep,
just,
sorry,
just,
go ahead.
let me, just,
Yep.
Section 1 says all groups, and then Section 2 says, but if there is a group that's an even
There
number.
may be any,
Why would there be? If
Well-
if Section 1 says that you can't have
an
one.
existing, well,
Well, this
because existing versus a new.
bylaw review committee would actually
We were-
be not in
we
conformance. They
didn't
have
agree,
6.
yeah. So, I mean,
Right.
if it's an existing group versus a new, like the open space ad hoc group or the bylaw ad hoc group that it was, et cetera. Yeah.
well, we're in a situation now where we actually could be back to an odd number. I mean, we're down from a committee of 6, we only have 4. So if we bump it up to 5, we have the odd number. I would take,
No, but we already agree, no, what are you talking about? The charge was that we are 5 plus the
plus the
town
ex
clerk
officio
is
town
a
clerk.
ex officio member, so we are 6.
Mhm.
And if we run into
Problem.
an issue with tie votes, then we've got to deal with that, but we
Yes.
haven't run into that yet. But anyway, I mean,
And
that was the new charge that got approved by the select
The
board.
only group? Are you guys the only group that are?
Well, I
that
mean,
is
there may be
even?
other groups that come up. People are talking about redoing the energy committee, or, I mean, there may be new groups that are, not existing now that may come back into existence.
Yeah, the open space was just created.
Yeah, but that can't happen per
So-
Section 1.
That would have to have the right number of
Right.
members as it's created, correct.
Okay,
But if there's an existing group,
okay.
yeah. All right, Section 3. Individuals may request to join a particular appointed group by submitting an application form to the said group or the select board directly. All application forms received by the select board shall be forwarded to the members of the group. So if somebody came to the select board saying, we want to be members of the finance committee, we would then send that back to the finance committee. That's what that's trying to say. The form application to serve on a town board or committee may be found at Town Hall or on the town's webpage. In considering applicants, members of the group shall evaluate the applicant's qualifications in light of the needs of the group. A group shall submit its recommendation along with the applications considered to the select board within 1 month of receiving an application. In rare cases, when it's determined that the needs of the group so dictate, the select board may ask a group to consider the expedited review of an application. Section 4, should an applicant feel that his or her application to volunteer to join a committee has not been evaluated fully by the group or within the specified time frame, the applicant may ask the select board to review the status of the application. Based on its review, the select board may vote to appoint the applicant despite the lack of recommendation from the group in question. It's understood that such an action would take place only in unusual circumstances and after extensive outreach to the group in question.
Is this focused on a particular incident or something? This seems so unbelievably detailed to me.
I guess
Why do we need this?
a specific instance did arise where there was a vacancy for almost 6 months.
Yeah.
And it wasn't moving forward until actually the select board ended up having to intervene. This was before any of our time here. And, I mean, the fact that it happened once, would it happen again? I don't know, but coming back to
Again, we'll see
trying
what,
to set it up so
we'll
that
see
we
what KP has to say
facilitate.
too. It may be too much. I mean,
Ed?
I'm just going to say there, in my opinion, there is, well, yes, but I'm just going to say there is need for control in a single point of contact. So to me, I can't think of an appointed group that gets appointed by anybody off the top of my head other than the select board. I believe all the applications should come to the select board, whether that is through me or not. Now, and then, yes, they could be forwarded to those groups and committees for action, but I personally think the idea of, oh, it can go here, it can go there, it can go over here and get lost, bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, this thing does state that it all comes to I mean, it can be submitted anywhere, but I see what you're saying here.
No, you're right, Ed, that makes sense.
So that would be in section 3, Ed? So instead of, instead of setting it to the said group or the select board directly, you should say to the select board. Select board directly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
that's clear. Yep, I don't disagree.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this may be too detailed, guys, so I mean, we can, talk about it later.
In
too.
many cases, simplification is good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's,
with this stuff.
But, okay, 5, if group members whose terms expire wish to be reappointed, the group shall consider these individuals' applications along with those of any new applicants. The group recommendations for appointment and reappointment should be submitted along with all applications considered to the select board. If there are no new applicants, the select board may choose to reappoint those whose terms expire. The select board shall evaluate all applicants' qualifications in light of the needs of the group. The select board will give considerable weight to a group's recommendation for each appointment or reappointment. Once the select board appoints an individual, the town administrator's office sends a notice to the individual and a copy of the certificate of appointment to the town clerk's office. Individuals must formally accept the appointment by being sworn in by the town clerk. If a member of a group is absent for more than half of the group's regularly scheduled meetings over a 6-month period and/or does not participate in the group's work over a 6-month period, said member may be removed from the group by majority vote. Upon removal, the individual may appeal the decision to the select board. The select board may vote to remove some or all members of an appointed group for cause. The select board's consideration of such an action may be initiated by the select board itself or by a petition signed by 25 registered voters.
Yeah, I'm just
So
going to
there
go
you
back,
go.
and I'm going to go back to section 5 and say the same thing. If group members whose terms expires wish to be appointed, the group shall consider these individuals. It should be the select board.
Okay.
I mean, yes, the select board should get feedback from the chair
Yeah.
or whatever of the particular group, but I think it,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Okay.
And what do you think about some of this last stuff? Is this too much? I don't know. Lucy, thoughts?
I just wanted to say on letter B, I think we should somehow in that last line where it says individuals must formally accept the appointment by being sworn in by the town clerk, change that or reword it to say that individuals who are appointed must be sworn in by the town clerk in order to,
Participate in the meeting, participate in the.
right, participate. Somehow, you know, because,
Flipping the sentence a little bit is what you're saying?
yeah, just reword it a little bit. Because technically,
Okay.
they can't serve until they're sworn in. so.
Before attending a meeting or before.
Well, they could attend the meeting as a public person.
Well, yes, but I mean,
They
as a
couldn't
board member,
participate.
Yeah.
as a, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
If they're being appointed, then
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other?
I mean, I'm not privy to what, or I don't know what section 4 is written for, but there's part of me that just says we don't need that, but,
It's too much.
I mean, if you feel that we need it, it is too much, but if you feel like we need it, it's well written. It works. It doesn't contradict anything. It's just, it's like an extra layer that I don't.
You're right. No,
We could add extra layers to everything over here.
This was written, this was not a recent one. This was written some time ago,
Okay.
Yeah, it just never moved forward.
trying to
Yeah.
resolve a situation.
But section 4, Matt, was relating to somebody who's applied and haven't heard anything,
Right.
right? So they can ask the select board what's going on. I applied 2 months ago and I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, and in section C, I'm just going to go back to it once again, it's the select board's appointee, so, I mean, if someone doesn't meet those requirements, it should be the select board voting to remove them from the group and not the group itself.
In section C, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Good, thanks. Okay.
Which it says in D. Too.
It says
Same
it
thing,
in,
was the same thing.
yeah, it says it
Yeah.
in D. We might modify that a little bit. I think we were looking at participation in meetings, because we've had committees in the past where
I know.
people have not
Yeah, we
been in
have,
full attendance.
we have issues with filling committees too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, and then the very last one, really not? This is one from Conservation Commission has proposed it, and this is just wetlands protection. And this is just dealing with enforcement issues of the Wetlands Protection Act. So shall I go read this one through? Okay. So, Wetlands Protection Enforcement, Section 1, the following procedures of the Southampton Conservation Commission, paragraph, augment those of the Wetlands Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and the regulations thereunder. The commission shall have the authority to enforce this bylaw, its regulations and permits issued thereunder by violation notices, non-criminal citations under MGL 40, administrative orders, tax liens, and civil and criminal court actions. Any person who violates provisions of the bylaw may be ordered to restore the property to its original condition or take other actions deemed reasonable and necessary to remedy such violations, or may be fined or both. Upon request of the commission, the select board shall direct the town council to take legal action for enforcement under civil law. Upon request of the commission, the chief of police shall take legal action for enforcement under criminal law. Town boards and officers, including any police officer or other officer having police powers, shall have the authority to assist the commission in enforcement. Any person who violates any provision of the bylaw, regulations, permits, or administrative orders issued thereunder shall be served with a notice of violation enumerating the alleged violations. If after 10 business days the commission has not received what it deems to be either, 1, sufficient evidence that demonstrating that no violations have occurred, or 2, a filing that will remove the violations along with evidence that sufficient progress is being made to correct the violation, then the violator shall be published by a fine of up to $300 per offense. Beginning 10 business days after the notice of the violation, each day or portion thereof during which the violation continues or unauthorized fill or other alteration remains in place shall constitute a separate offense, and each provision of the bylaw, regulations, permits, or administrative orders violated shall constitute a separate offense. Section 6, in addition to any fine, the town shall be entitled to reimbursement for all expenses, including legal fees, incurred in prosecuting said violation, either civilly or criminally. And the only change there was up into the very last sentence, does not need to be included there. The commission may grant waivers. They wanted that last sentence stricken out, just the last sentence of section 2. That's it. So this is basically all related to the wetlands protection, which is Mass state law. The Concom is definitely acting not only on behalf of the town, but they're one that's tied much more tightly into state law. And this gives them some powers of enforcement for those who may choose not to adhere to some of the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act. And this gives them the powers to provide some enforcement to that. And I think over time, there has not been very few violations of this, but there are times when we do have people that need to have this in front of them, I think. So the Concom would like to put this in place. And if you basically don't do anything wrong, you'll never have to deal with it.
No.
I mean, basically, yeah, so it's really just trying to help give them a little bit of teeth in terms of what they do.
I don't have a
Any
problem
thoughts
with
on
it.
that one, Ed? Any?
Actually, believe it or not, that one's already at legal review, because I had asked town council if they had any templates that were shorter than the last one.
This is actually modeled after South Hadley's, almost verbatim, not quite,
Yeah,
but,
so,
this has
yeah.
already been an approved one for South Hadley, so
Yeah.
that's
so-
what we've tried to do is
Yeah.
look for some, yep.
Yeah, the actual shortest one that KP was aware of that they thought was viable and workable was Hadley's, and that's 13 pages long.
Yeah.
So,
No,
but-
as, we're really just, I mean, we might go back and add some other, or they might come back and add something later on,
Yeah.
in some other future meeting, but all they're really looking for now is the enforcement section
Yeah.
of it as related to the wetlands protection.
Yeah, so when they came back and said the shortest one they knew was 13 pages, I sent them this probably in its form about a week ago,
Great.
so.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you heard back?
No.
Okay.
Like I say, town councils were all on vacation around the
Yeah,
holidays,
sure.
so.
Yeah. So basically, that gets us through the list of what we think we would want to have on the warrant. So that's about 15-ish of them, plus a couple to delete, the couple that Randall mentioned tonight,
Yeah.
and the fees to town treasury. So there's 3 to be deleted as recommendations.
So if you just let me know which ones are absolutely ready for me to ship off tomorrow morning, and go over the ones that I gotta wait till they're amended, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think,
No, we don't want you to send anything
Yeah, we
unless it's
probably-
in
we
this
probably-
form to the lawyers, because we don't
Yeah,
want the
we
paper.
probably
Need
need-
to waste the time.
yeah, we need to just take another walkthrough based on our comments tonight, if that's okay, and
Okay, because I did have 3 and 4 ready to go, so, but
okay.
without any amendments.
Okay.
4,
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't have any changes on
Yeah.
4, and
3 and 4 are good.
actually, you could go ahead with those two, Select Board and Town Administrator, sure. Let's go with those two at least. And then if you want to do that, I don't know what you think about number 8, where we wanted to take out that one paragraph.
I can send that to
That one,
them.
I think if we just
Yeah.
take out the historical buildings part and leave in that section 2 about the other weird licenses.
And how about the 26 and 27, which were removed, deletes?
We're going to remove, yeah, that would be a new one, 26 and 27, and then we were recommending 23 as well. All 3 of those would be to be deleted. So fees to town treasury,
Okay.
solid waste, and commercial ID stickers. Those 3 would be recommended for deletion.
Okay, that at least gives me
That'll give
like
you-
5 to start with.
Sure, no, that'd be
Yeah.
good. Then that'll give us,
Because, 2 weeks' time, because my
I know.
intent is to have this all written up
Yeah,
for
no,
signing
and we'll-
on the 21st,
Yeah.
is getting shorter and
yeah,
shorter.
no, that's true.
And,
We can,
you know,
yes, so-
everything else, we have to tweak in some form or another.
yeah, we got a few little tweaks here and there,
Okay.
but we'll do our best to get yet another clean copy, yeah?
Let's see what Robert has to say about number
Yeah.
1.
Okay.
Robert Floyd, Town Moderator. Sleeping bags, s'mores, Snickers. sharing what I said last meeting, the town moderator will divide the question. We'll split each of these separate bylaws. We'll discuss them, we'll vote on them, put it aside, take the next one.
My intent was to actually do each one as a separate article, so it'll fall right into that process.
Either way. Either way, because once we do that, we don't have to vote on all of them together, so it would apply.
It's probably easier because I think some might have questions and others might not have any questions, right? So I
Well,
think
then we would pass through,
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, it seems like doing them sort of one by one, I mean, it's a little onerous.
Robert and I will talk about it over the next few
Yeah.
days.
See
So.
what makes- you guys
the
don't
town
system-
moderator's going to have an information session on Thursday, January 30th, oh my. January 30th, 7 to 9, right here. So it would be after they're approved and the warrant is finalized, we'll have the information session, and we'll only talk about the articles certainly and not the motions, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're going to send edits for number
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Catch up with you, yeah.
Tamara Lunas, 298 College Highway, kind of goes off of what Robert just said. Who actually comes up with the order that the articles are going to be presented? There's 14, 15 articles, and then one of the 15, one is 15.
Huh?
The number.
Huh?
She
So-
said there are 15 articles.
There's 15 articles.
Yeah.
One has 15.
But the bylaws have 15 in it itself. So who comes up with where these are going to come
Right here.
to us at
Right
that
here.
meeting?
Right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you suggesting we renumber them? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, well, I'm
Well,
just
I mean,
thinking if
you're
you,
going to have, for example, they aren't going to be right off the bat. So, for example, let's just say,
Just wondering if you get the quick things done first.
Number one, the town meeting comes, Robert has some suggestions for edits. The board goes along with them, whatever. So it could be Article 10 is Article 1 of the bylaws, town meeting. Could be Article 11 is Article 3 of the bylaws, select board. Yeah.
okay.
Or it could be if Robert and I talk and the two of us think that, okay, let's put them all together on one, and then he'll separate them out. It
So
could
you're-
be Article 10 or 11 or
So you-
whatever is all of these, and he'll separate them out.
So you wouldn't be doing all the transfers of money, the quick things first to get them done?
Well, if you notice, I just said that they won't come at the beginning.
Okay.
I think one of the confusion is a lot of those numbers are the original numbers.
Oh, yeah. But I was just looking at this going, oh my God,
Well,
it's the
and-
second thing on this articles for the special meeting, and it's 15, and there's 14 after
Well,
it.
the other thing, don't forget, is it would actually, other than Article 1 town meeting,
Yeah.
they're all going to be referenced as Roman numerals, because that's how they are in the bylaws. They're not going to be, Article 10 is Article 1, it'll be, yes, that one will be, but,
It'll be messy.
yeah. 2 is going to be the Roman
Just-
numeral 2,
my
3 is
concern
going to be the
was
Roman
that
3.
It's
Yeah.
the bylaws are the second thing listed on here.
Okay, no.
And are they being done at the very beginning of this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we may still have 30 articles, but.
I would just like to say one thing. I would hope that they generate as much enthusiasm as Tammy thought that they might in worrying about where they were placed. It would be nice if people would read them and carefully bring up any concerns. But my guess is, and I have seen this before, you get to a bylaw and it's the least bit long, they don't, let's get over this. Let's not even read it, let's not think about it. And I really hope that we do get the kind of response that will keep people discussing it for a bit.
I don't need pizza.
So let me,
Yeah, but my guess is,
let me just ask Robert, the procedure is that we are going to have to read this whole document.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's gonna be awesome.
So people who haven't read it, they're gonna hear it anyway.
Hitchhiking what Virginia said, Robert Floyd, town moderator, we have in our bylaw that the meeting can change the order for a good reason that the moderator would accept. Other towns have it where the moderator can choose willy-nilly. Other towns have a lottery system where they select numbers in a hat and read it that way.
That's awesome.
But, yeah, fascinating, fascinating. But we'll see about the reading. Yeah, everybody will have it in front of them. We've wiggled before and streamlined it a bit, so we'll wait until. Okay, cheers.
And if you have your marked up copy, I'll take it so that we can.
Oh, tomorrow. I have
Okay.
it, yeah.
Okay,
I want to discuss it with the deputy moderator, too.
okay.
So I think we're done with what we wanted to
I do
talk
too.
about here.
Okay, so we
Thank you
are,
for your indulgence.
so we're not doing anything right now.
Yeah, there were,
Yeah. Yeah, there's,
Okay.
should be
yeah, this came up.
one item left on the agenda, at least for open session.
Where?
Articles for special town meeting.
Okay.
You just want to go through those and
Short-term disability approval. Do they need to do that? It's taken
should be
off? Okay.
scratched off yours.
Yeah, it might be,
Is that on
I don't know. We're taking it off.
Okay.
Is that on the agenda?
What?
Or are you just adding it?
The articles?
Yes.
For special town meeting, yes.
it is.
So there's the ones that I anticipated or knew about that were listed, but I had to post the agenda last Friday, and they had until yesterday to submit articles. So I'm just going to go through what I had listed that I was anticipating, and I will go through what has come in since this was posted. So on the agenda, articles of special town meeting, additional funding for tree removal for tree warden, that did come in, and the tree warden is is requesting $5,000 additional due to the amount of trees that have had to be taken down so far this year. The bylaw review, updated bylaws, whatever the select board decides to move forward will be on there, and whatever we get back from KP Law. Transfer for general insurance funding. I did peg that, and we had come up short for what we had budgeted for this year, and let's see if I've got it in here. 0.10. I don't see it. My memory is, I think it's $3,750 looking to transfer for that. Planning board zoning bylaw change requests. There are actually two of them, one for the College Highway property, and, well, actually, they're both on College Highway. The one up here next to Opa Opa, and then College Highway and the corner of Valley Road. A donation of property from the Hendrickses. Funding for the health director position, and that has come in. The total dollar amount is, I think it's, let's say, $16,328.60, and our town accountant is still looking to see if that can be broken up into a transfer from any existing budget lines versus taking it all as a transfer from free cash. Transfer funding for health insurance, Transfer funding for the union contract retroactivity for fiscal year 19 and 20 for highway, police, and dispatchers. It looks like there may be enough funds in the highway and dispatchers budgets to cover that, but we very possibly will have to do some retroactivity funding for the police. Traditionally, once we have free cash certified for at the special town meeting, we'll transfer the appropriate percentages from the free cash to operational stabilization, capital stabilization, and the OPEB trust fund. The town-owned property on College Highway, authoring the select board to dispose of it as surplus property, and that's the portion that was the tire dump. Transfer for amortization of the WPAT bonds for fiscal year 2020, which is $200. Transfer for election wages, because they're transferred from a vendor account to an actual payroll account of $5,000. Do we want to think about actually transferring free cash into the reserve fund for $5,000, because we did not fund that at the beginning of the year because of where we were with the budget? It might be a prudent move to do that in case anything pops up unforeseen for the rest of the year. Then submitted articles. The town clerk has submitted a request for an article to see if the town will accept MGL Chapter 41, Section 19G, and raise and appropriate or otherwise provide the sum of $300 to be paid to the town clerk to be in compliance with MGL Chapter 41, Section 19G, or take any other action relative to. This is a section of the Mass General Laws that would allow a town clerk who is also a member of the Board of Registrars to receive up to $300 extra in pay. It's a two-part piece. Number one, the town would have to, that's why it's written this way, accept Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 19G. The second part of it is we would have to raise or appropriate the $300 from some source. Told you about the tree warden expenses. The police chief has asked for an article to transfer to police overtime expenses, the $10,000 from the communication wages. It's a transfer within his budget. And he did talk about that a little bit in his quarterly update. Town clerk has also asked for, requested an article to see if the town will vote to raise, appropriate, or otherwise provide the amount of $6,200 to fund the expense of incorporating an e-codification system into the town's website in order to have our general bylaws and any other bylaws and regulations, i.e. planning, zoning, organized online. I have told the town clerk that it's my opinion that that might be more pertinent for the annual town meeting in May rather than the special town meeting, but that is this board's decision. The conveyance of property at 93 College Highway, that's the piece that was the tire dump. And let's say those three. And then there's one other one. We had kind of talked about this back in, I think it was around the October timeframe. We haven't talked about it since. I did draft an article which would change the treasurer collector to an appointed position from the elected. I don't know if the board would like to proceed with that. Again, we had talked about doing that. If the board is interested in doing that, the special town meeting would be the correct time, because the town meeting vote has to take place at least 60 days before the annual town election. And that's where we are.
A long meeting.
I mean, if you'd like to bounce any of those out at this point in time, or save them to the next meeting, I will just draft a a warrant to be posted with all of these things on it, and you can vote at the next meeting. Depending on how many changes, I might be able to edit it while the meeting's going on for signature. Worst case scenario, if it takes extra time, we'd probably have to post for a special meeting where at least 3 of you would have to be at to sign it, probably maybe 4 or 5 days after that, to meet the requirement to have it signed and able to be posted at least 2 weeks before the special town meeting.
Okay.
That's good. That's good.
You have something to say?
My name is George Rancourt. I live in White Loaf Road.
Okay.
And I've stood out here for 3 or 4 elections with a sign for the clerk and the treasurer, right, that keep them from being appointed.
Okay.
Now, this thing has been voted down by 2 select boards, I believe, and 4 or 5 times in an election. Okay? How many times do we have to go through this? Until you get your way? That's what I have to say about it. We have very little to vote for when we come to elections. Select board and some of these other people, right? Now, you want to make an appointment? We had a young lady who worked in here who really knew her stuff. We couldn't come up with the extra money to keep her from leaving. And the extra money was what, $15,000, $20,000? Because that's why she left. I think the clerk is, what we have today is working really well. The treasurer works out very, very well, or at least for what we can afford. And I hope she's doing a good job. Everybody says, everybody who I've talked to says that is the case. Right? Everything is appointed in this town. What do we have left? I'll leave you at that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Nope. Any articles that we don't?
Nope.
Worth just asking, any articles that we don't want to at least send out to the public? Or at least send out for warrant, I'm sorry. Is there anyone that we want to pull or not? I personally don't.
I don't know that I'm comfortable doing that without a full board.
I thought we were going to wait to vote
Yeah.
when we had the full board here.
Yeah, no,
on
I
the
think that
whole-
that's
on all of
appropriate.
it.
I'm asking the question,
Yeah.
not that it's not leading in any way. All right, so Ed, you're going to do what you said you were going to do with regard
Yes.
to drafting these, and then we have a full board. And
Right, and then it's just a question of how many changes, if it can be edited that night, or we'll need a special meeting to actually vote to sign it once it's edited.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so if there's nothing else, which there shouldn't be, because we hit every section, correct?
You got everything in the open, and then we'll just have the executive sessions.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
see.
so if there's nothing else, we're going to head into executive session. We will not be rejoining an open session. We're going to enter into executive session under General Law, Section 30A, 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining litigation in the matter of Regina Shea Sullivan versus the Town of Southampton Selectboard et al., because the chair has declared that discussing the matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town, and for under executive session under General Law, Section C30A, 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares. I don't know what these abbreviations mean, but I can...
It's actually the case.
All right, Southampton Teachers Association.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Yeah, we move into executive session.
I'll second.
All right, roll call vote.
Fowles, aye.
Tishman, aye.
Roland, aye.
Yep.
Going into executive session, we'll take
Night,
five.
take care.
Take 5 minutes.